New CEO cut my salary by 20% after 12 years of loyalty. I stayed calm, resigned, and joined their biggest competitor. 9 weeks later, their network collapsed. Carriers walked nationwide. $8.4 million in operational losses. Hey Reddit, grab a snack because this one's long. Name's Dominic, 36 male. My wife Jules has this saying she uses whenever I come home looking like someone ran over my soul. She'll pour herself some tea, look at me with those big brown eyes and say, "All right, walk me through it. Start from the dumb part." That phrase has gotten me through 12 years at Polaris Biologistics, cold chain pharma logistics. Sounds boring until you realize one slip-up means medications that don't work, lawsuits that definitely do, and people who might actually die. A 2-degree temperature excursion for 4 hours can destroy a shipment worth more than most people's houses. And unlike regular shipping, where a late package means an annoyed customer, a late pharma package can mean a transplant patient doesn't get their immunosuppressants. No pressure, right? I figured out early that I had a brain for this stuff. It was 2012, my second year at Polaris, and a power failure hit our Memphis distribution center during a brutal July heat wave. We had $1.8 million worth of biologics sitting in a facility with no functioning climate control. Temperature climbing fast. Everyone was running around like headless chickens. The operations VP was sweating through his shirt, screaming into his phone at the utility company, like that would somehow restore power faster. I grabbed a corridor map and started making calls. Within 4 hours, I'd rerouted everything salvageable to Nashville through a carrier contact I'd been quietly building a relationship with. Coordinated dry ice emergency delivery from 3 different suppliers. Arranged backup generator transport from a rental company in Arkansas. Saved about $1.4 million in product that would have been destroyed by morning. The VP took full credit in the quarterly report. My name didn't appear anywhere. I didn't care. I knew what I could do. More importantly, I knew what I was becoming. My buddy Terrence, who ran the Memphis floor back then, watched the whole thing go down. He's this big guy with a loud laugh and zero filter. Afterward, he walked up to me with this look on his face like he just witnessed a magic trick. "My man," he said, shaking his head slowly, "you just saved more money in 4 hours than I'll make in 5 years. And you did it while eating a granola bar." I shrugged. It was a good granola bar. That became our thing. Every time I pulled off something ridiculous, Terrence would find me afterward and rate the snack I happened to be eating during the crisis. It sounds stupid, but those moments kept me sane. The work was invisible. Nobody outside the industry understood what I actually did. But Terrence got it. Jules loved Terrence. Called him my work husband. Terrence called her the real boss of my life, which wasn't wrong. Over 12 years, I became the guy who knew everything at Polaris Biologistics. I knew every temperature corridor in our network, knew which carriers had reliable refrigerated units, and which ones were running on prayers and duct tape, knew that the I-40 corridor through Arizona becomes a death trap for cold chain during summer months, because the ambient heat overwhelms standard insulation faster than most people realize, knew that any shipment routing through the Midwest during tornado season needed contingency protocols that could activate within minutes. I built predictive models that tracked weather patterns, equipment failure rates, and carrier reliability across every region we served. When a vaccine shortage hit in 2021, my system rerouted distribution in real time to prioritize high-need areas. Hospitals got what they needed. Kids got vaccinated. The work was invisible until something went wrong. And things rarely went wrong because I was paying attention. That was the frustrating part of my job. Success meant nobody noticed you existed. By year 8, I was director of cold chain operations, overseeing expansion from 3 distribution centers to 7 major hubs and 19 satellite facilities. I handpicked my regional managers personally, trained them on my systems, built them into a network that could respond to problems faster than most companies could identify them. I never asked for much, didn't backstab my way up any ladder. Just did the job, did it well, and went home to Jules every night. We'd have dinner together. She'd ask about my day. I'd tell her about whatever fire I'd put out. She'd say something like, "Sounds like they'd fall apart without you." I'd shrug. Probably. Neither of us knew how true that would turn out to be. Our old CEO, Richard, understood operations. He'd started in warehouse management 30 years ago, worked his way up the hard way. He walked the floor regularly, knew people's names, respected the ones who made the machine actually work. When he announced his retirement in early 2023, I was cautiously optimistic. The board had been making noises about fresh leadership and modern perspectives for years. I figured we'd get some polished MBA type who would make us sit through pointless strategy sessions and mandatory team-building exercises, but would ultimately leave operations alone because they knew they didn't understand it. What I didn't expect was Victoria Marsh. The meeting request landed in my calendar at 6:50 p.m. on a Monday, scheduled for 8:10 a.m. Tuesday. That weirdly specific time should have been my first warning sign. I barely slept that night. Jules noticed. She always did. "You're tossing around like crazy," she mumbled into her pillow around 2 a.m. "What's going on?" "Weird meeting tomorrow." "Not sure what it's about." She rolled over and looked at me in the dark. "What kind of weird?" "Honestly, I don't know yet. That's what's bugging me." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Well, either way, you'll handle it. You always do." I walked into the executive wing the next morning with that conversation replaying in my head. The hallway felt different, quieter than usual, tenser. The receptionist wouldn't meet my eyes when I passed her desk. Victoria was already seated when I entered the conference room. Perfectly pressed blazer. Manicured nails tapping the glass table in a rhythmic pattern that could have been impatience or boredom or both. She didn't stand when I walked in. Didn't offer a handshake. Just looked at me like I was an item on her to-do list she was about to check off. Next to her sat Owen, the CFO she'd imported from some retail chain known for gutting operational staff to boost quarterly numbers. He had that uncomfortable look people get when they know something bad is about to happen. His pen was already poised over a notepad, ready to document whatever unpleasant business was about to go down. Victoria skipped the pleasantries, slid a manila folder across the glass table toward me. I opened it, read the first page, felt my stomach drop. 20% salary reduction. Effective immediately. The explanation was buried in corporate jargon. Compensation realignment to market standards. Industry benchmarking analysis. Strategic cost optimization initiative. But strip away the buzzwords and the message was obvious. They thought I was overpaid. They thought someone cheaper could do what I did. "The analysis shows your compensation is significantly above market average for your role," Victoria said. Her voice had that smooth, condescending tone people use when they've already decided you're beneath them and are just going through the motions of a conversation. I looked up from the folder. "Market average for what exactly?" She blinked. Apparently she'd expected me to just accept this quietly, to nod along and thank her for the opportunity to keep my job at reduced pay. "For logistics operations directors in the pharmaceutical distribution sector," I almost laughed. "The market average you're citing covers single facility directors, warehouse managers overseeing maybe 50 people, and regional delivery coverage. Not nationwide cold chain networks with FDA compliance requirements, temperature-critical biologics worth millions, and specialized carrier relationships that took a decade to build." Her eyes hardened. "I'm sure your contributions are valuable, but the board has approved this adjustment. It's not a negotiation." Owen jumped in with his practiced, sympathetic voice. "We've paired the adjustment with performance-based incentives tied to cost-saving initiatives. There's real upside potential here. So they wanted to cut my base pay by 20% and then make me earn it back by finding more ways to cut costs. In a system I'd already optimized over 12 years. And if I don't accept?" I asked. Kept my voice level. Victoria leaned back in her chair. "Then we'd need to explore alternative staffing solutions. People who can execute similar responsibilities at a more sustainable cost level." There it was. The threat wrapped in corporate packaging. "Accept the cut or we'll replace you with someone cheaper." As if 12 years of knowing every detail about this place could be swapped out like a printer cartridge. "You'll have my decision by Friday," I said. Her eyebrows rose slightly. She'd expected capitulation. Immediate acceptance. Maybe some grateful hand-wringing about how I understood the company's position. "We'd prefer to resolve this today," she said. "The adjustment needs to be implemented across the division, and delays create complications." "I'm sure they do." I stood up. "But you'll have my decision Friday." I walked out without looking back. Behind me, I heard Owen whisper something too quiet to make out. Victoria's response was loud enough to catch. "He'll come around." They always do when they realize they have nowhere else to go? Yeah, we'd see about that. I didn't go straight home after that meeting. Drove around for a while instead, trying to process what had just happened. Ended up parked at some overlook on the edge of town, staring at nothing while my brain ran in circles. 12 years of building something that kept people's medications viable. 12 years of preventing disasters nobody ever saw because I caught them before they happened. And they wanted to cut me by 20% because some spreadsheet said I was above average. When I finally walked through the door, Jules was in the kitchen making dinner. She took one look at my face and put down the spatula. "That bad?" I sat down at the kitchen table, told her everything. Jules listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. So what are you going to do? I don't know yet. I need to figure out our financial situation first. See how long we can survive if I walk away without something else lined up. She nodded. Okay, let's look at the numbers together after dinner. Figure out where we actually stand. This is why I married this woman. No panic. Just practical next steps and confidence that we'd figure it out together. The numbers weren't great. We had savings, but not enough to float indefinitely. The mortgage, car payments, insurance, everything added up faster than either of us liked to admit. We could manage for maybe 4 months without income. 5 if we cut everything to the bone and survived on rice and anxiety. There's another option, I said, hating the words even as they came out of my mouth. I could ask my family. Jules looked at me carefully. She knew my history with them. My older brother Wade had inherited our father's share of the family car dealership. They'd always looked at my career choice like it was a phase. I'd never asked them for anything. Not once in 15 years. If you think that's the right move, Jules said carefully. I tried. Drove to my mother's house the next evening. Wade's truck was already in the driveway. My mother offered me coffee. I said no thanks. Wade was sprawled on the couch like he owned the place. I kept it simple. Explained the situation at work. The salary cut. The job hunt. Asked if they could help with a short-term loan until I landed somewhere new. Wade laughed before I even finished talking. So the big pharma genius finally comes crawling back, he said. What happened to your fancy career being the smart play? It's a temporary situation. I'm not asking for a handout. I'm asking for a loan. Right, a loan. He made air quotes. And what happens when Jules figures out she married a guy who can't even keep a job? You think she's going to stick around while you figure your life out? I looked at my mother. She was studying her cup like it held the secrets of the universe. Said nothing. That's not going to happen, I said. Sure it's not. Wade leaned forward. Face it, little brother. You picked the wrong path. Should have stayed in the family business like Dad wanted. But no, you had to go prove something. How's that working out for you? I waited another few seconds. Gave my mother one more chance to say something. Anything. She didn't. I stood up. Thanks for your time. That's it? Wade called after me. You're just gonna leave? Classic. Always running from reality. I didn't respond. Just walked out the front door and drove home. Jules was waiting when I got back. How'd it go? About how you'd expect. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I never liked Wade anyway. His cologne smells like desperation and hair gel. I laughed for the first time in 2 days. Genuine laughter that cracked something loose in my chest. All right, she said. So we do this the hard way. You start looking for jobs tomorrow. I'll pick up extra hours at the clinic. We figure it out together. You sure? She took my hand. Dominic, we've been doing things together for 9 years. This isn't any different. It's just a bigger problem. And we're pretty good at problems. I went back to work thinking I could survive there until I found something else. Keep my head down, do my job, use the time to job hunt quietly. That plan lasted exactly 6 days. It started with small humiliations. My regular parking spot, the one I'd had for 8 years, was suddenly reassigned to Owen without any explanation. My office got moved from the 4th floor to a windowless storage room near the loading docks, right next to the forklift charging station. My access to certain systems was temporarily restricted pending the compensation resolution. Terrence noticed immediately when he saw my new accommodations. Dude, they moved you next to the forklift charging station? That hum is going to make you lose your mind within a week. I've seen it happen. Already on day 4, I said. I've started having dreams about beeping. In the dreams, the beeps are trying to tell me something important, but I can never quite understand what. That's dark, man. But the real humiliation came on day 6. Victoria called an all-hands operations meeting. Unusual, since she normally avoided the operations floor like it might get dirt on her designer clothes. I walked in and found every regional manager, every floor supervisor, every logistics coordinator packed into our largest conference room. Terrence stood in the back and gave me a look that said something bad is coming. Victoria stood at the front with a PowerPoint presentation behind her. The title slide read, Operational Excellence, A New Direction. I want to talk about the future of Polaris operations, she began. Specifically, about bringing in fresh perspectives to modernize our approach and eliminate the inefficiencies that have been holding us back. Inefficiencies. She was talking about systems that had prevented millions in losses. Systems I'd built. Effective immediately, I'm pleased to announce that we've brought in a consultant who will be overseeing our operational restructuring. Many of you may know him from his previous industry work. Please welcome Garrett. A guy in his early 30s walked in. Slick suit, confident smile, handshake-ready posture. I'd heard of Garrett. Everyone in cold chain circles had heard of him. 3 years ago, his recommendations cost a competitor $4 million in spoiled inventory and triggered an FDA investigation. Everyone in the industry knows his name for the wrong reasons. And now he was standing in our conference room, about to restructure our operations. Garrett will be working closely with all of you, Victoria continued, looking directly at me, to identify areas where we can modernize and streamline. I expect full cooperation from everyone. After the meeting, Terrence pulled me aside in the hallway. Garrett Finch? The same Garrett Finch who tanked the Atlantic Corridor project? Who got Atlantic Pharma Distribution slapped with an FDA warning letter? The same one. And they're putting him in charge of restructuring our operations? Yep. Terrence stared at me like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Dom, my man, please tell me you have an exit strategy here, because this is going to go bad for anyone who stays on this ship. I didn't answer, because I didn't have one. Not yet. 2 days later, Garrett called his first implementation meeting. I wasn't invited. Found out about it from one of my regional managers, who'd been specifically instructed not to tell me about the new meeting structure. The next morning, I discovered Garrett had recommended eliminating our backup temperature monitoring protocols, the redundant systems I'd designed specifically to catch equipment failures before they caused product loss. He called them duplicative overhead and legacy inefficiencies. I walked straight to Victoria's office. Her assistant tried to stop me with some excuse about her calendar being completely full for the day. I walked past her anyway. Victoria looked up from her computer with annoyance. Do you have an appointment? No, but I have a serious concern about the consultant you hired, recommending that we eliminate safety protocols that have saved this company over $3 million in the past 4 years. Her expression didn't change. Garrett is a highly regarded professional. His recommendations have been thoroughly reviewed and approved by the board. His recommendations are going to result in spoiled pharmaceuticals and potential lawsuits. That's your opinion. That's my 12 years of experience preventing exactly the kind of disasters he's about to cause. She smiled. Speaking of your experience, she said, leaning back in her chair, I've been meaning to discuss something with you. Given your ongoing resistance to the compensation adjustment and your apparent inability to work collaboratively with Garrett, I think it's time we formally transitioned your responsibilities. Meaning what exactly? Meaning your position will be eliminated effective in 30 days. We'll offer a modest severance package, of course. 2 weeks' pay, and we'd expect you to help make the transition to Garrett smooth during that period. 2 weeks' pay. And they wanted me to spend a full month training the guy who was going to dismantle everything I'd built. Training him for free. I looked at her and felt something click into place. I'll have my response by end of day, I said. There's nothing to respond to. This is a notification, not a negotiation. So was your salary cut. And yet here we are. I turned and walked out. I didn't resign that day. Instead, I went home and got to work. Jules found me at the kitchen table with my laptop at 11 p.m., surrounded by notes and printouts. You're finally job hunting. Should have started weeks ago. Better late than never. What are you looking for? Anything in cold chain pharma that isn't run by sociopaths. It's a shorter list than you'd think. The first week was brutal. I sent out 14 applications. Got 3 responses. 2 were automated rejections that arrived within hours of applying, which meant my resume never reached a human being. 1 was a phone screen that went nowhere because they wanted someone willing to relocate to Wisconsin immediately, and I wasn't willing to uproot Jules from the life we'd built. Week 2 was worse. I expanded my search to adjacent industries, considered roles I was clearly overqualified for, started questioning every career decision I'd made in the past decade. The silence from applications was deafening. Every day checking email and finding nothing but spam. Every night lying awake wondering if I'd made a huge mistake by walking away from a guaranteed paycheck, even a reduced one. Jules kept her promise about extra hours at the clinic where she worked as a medical assistant. She'd come home exhausted at 8 p.m. and still ask about my day. Still find ways to make me laugh when everything felt hopeless. At least you're not getting rejection emails that start with, "Dear valued applicant," she said one night. That's when you know they really don't care. Small blessings. I started to doubt myself during week 3. Maybe Victoria was right. Maybe I was just an expensive leftover from a previous era. Maybe 12 years of expertise didn't actually matter to anyone except me. The doubts crept in at 3 a.m., whispering that I'd overestimated my value, that I'd been foolish to walk away, that I'd let pride wreck everything I'd built. Then Terrence called on a random afternoon. Yo, you still looking? Every day, getting nowhere. Good, because I just heard something that might change that. You know Danny? Worked with us back in 2015, the guy who always had snacks in his desk drawer? I remembered Danny, supply chain analyst, sharp mind. Left Polaris for a better opportunity, And we'd lost touch like you do with work friends who move on. Yeah, I remember him. What about him? He's at Vertex Pharmaceuticals now. Called me yesterday about something else and happened to mention they're building a new cold chain division from scratch. Posted the job this week. They're specifically looking for someone with multi-hub experience. Someone who understands temperature-critical distribution at scale. Vertex, one of the fastest-growing specialty pharma companies in the country. I'd followed their expansion for years, watching them grow from a regional operation to a national player. Here's the thing most people outside the industry don't realize. Polaris was a third-party logistics provider. We handled cold chain distribution for pharma companies who didn't want to build their own networks. Vertex had been one of those clients for years, but now they were done outsourcing. They wanted to build their own in-house cold chain operation. The moment they did that, they stopped being a customer and became a direct competitor. Every contract they pulled in-house was a contract Polaris lost. Where'd you hear this? I told you. Danny. He said to tell you that if you're interested, you should apply fast because they're not going to wait around. I applied that night, tailored my resume, heard nothing for 8 days, started losing hope again, started thinking about backup plans that felt more like surrender. Then the email came. They wanted a phone interview. The phone interview lasted 45 minutes. Real questions about real operational challenges. 3 days later, they wanted a video interview. 2 hours with the VP of supply chain and the head of their distribution planning team. More technical questions. More scenario planning. More opportunities to explain how I thought about problems. A week after that, they flew me to their headquarters for an in-person meeting. 4 hours with 3 different executives who actually listened when I spoke, who asked follow-up questions that showed they understood how complicated this stuff really was. If you had to design a redundant monitoring system for biologics transport, their VP of supply chain asked toward the end, what would be your top 3 priorities? I talked for 20 minutes, drew diagrams on their whiteboard, explained the failure points most systems missed, walked them through the predictive models I'd developed at Polaris and how they could be improved with better data infrastructure. When I finished, the VP looked at his colleagues. Dominic, he said, I'm going to be straight with you. We've interviewed 11 people for this role. You're the first one who actually understood how complicated this is. The first one who talked about prevention instead of just response. They offered me the job 3 days later. Vice President of Cold Chain Operations. Salary 35% higher than what I'd been making at Polaris before Victoria's cut. Full authority to build their national network from scratch. A leadership team that specifically said they wanted expertise driving decisions, not spreadsheets. I told Jules that night. Her eyes shined. You did it, she said. We did it. You kept us afloat while I figured this out. That's what we do. The next morning, I walked into Polaris for the last time as their operations director. My resignation letter was already printed. 2 weeks' notice as required by my contract. Victoria's assistant tried to stop me from entering her office. I walked past her again. It was becoming a routine. Victoria looked up. Her expression flickered when she saw the envelope in my hand. What's this? My resignation. Effective in 2 weeks. For the first time since I'd known her, Victoria looked genuinely surprised. You're resigning? Now? I've accepted a position with Vertex Pharmaceuticals, Vice President of Cold Chain Operations. I'll be building their national network from the ground up. The color drained from her face so fast. She knew Vertex. Everyone in the industry knew Vertex. They were the future of specialty pharma distribution. We can discuss the severance terms, she started. I don't want your severance. I want to complete a professional transition and leave. That's all I want from Polaris. She recovered quickly, but not quickly enough to hide the crack in her armor. Fine. I assume you'll cooperate fully with Garrett during the transition? I'll document everything he needs to know. Whether he can actually understand it is a different question. I walked out without looking back. My phone buzzed minutes later. Terrence. Victoria is already in damage control mode. Garrett has no idea what any of your systems actually do. I replied, that's about to become very obvious. My 2 weeks at Polaris felt like watching a slow-motion car accident. Every day brought new cracks in the foundation. New evidence that the people left in charge had absolutely no idea what they were doing. Day 1, Garrett eliminated my temperature alert redundancy system. Called it a cost savings win in his daily report to Victoria. Nobody noticed the backup monitoring going offline. Day 3, a refrigeration unit failed at the Kansas City hub during an overnight period. Without the backup alerts, the failure went undetected for 6 hours. By morning, $62,000 worth of specialty medications had to be destroyed. Garrett blamed outdated equipment in his report to Victoria. Nobody mentioned that the outdated equipment had been working fine for years with proper monitoring. Nobody connected the dots between his system changes and the failure. Terrence called me from the Memphis floor that afternoon, frustration obvious in his voice. Garrett is walking around asking everyone why no one noticed the temperature spike. I told him it was because he got rid of the system that would have caught it. What did he say? He told me that's not how monitoring systems work. I asked him how they do work then. He said he'd circle back. Terrence paused. He's never going to circle back, is he? He has no clue what circling back even means. He doesn't even know what questions to ask. This is bad, Dominic. Really bad. People are scared. The regional managers are all updating their resumes. By day 5, the damage was spreading past isolated incidents. 3 carriers were threatening to terminate their contracts because the new scheduling system Garrett had implemented kept sending incorrect pickup times. The coordination I'd spent years building was falling apart in real time. Temperature logs weren't being filed properly, which meant FDA compliance documentation was falling behind. Danny called during week 2 to check on my start date at Vertex. I told him about the chaos at Polaris. So you're telling me, Danny said slowly, that they hired a guy famous for wrecking cold chain operations to restructure their cold chain operations? That's exactly what I'm telling you. And they cut your salary because they thought you were too expensive? 20%. Danny was quiet for a moment. You know what this reminds me of? It's like firing the pilot mid-flight and asking the guy who sells pretzels to land the plane. And the pretzel guy is confident. That's the scary part. That's a solid comparison. The day before my last day, Polaris's biggest client, a hospital network that accounted for nearly 15% of monthly volume, called an emergency meeting with Victoria. Their shipments had been late or improperly documented 3 times in the past week. They were considering pulling the entire contract. I heard later that Victoria spent the call blaming market conditions and temporary transition challenges. The hospital network put Polaris on a 60-day probation period with specific performance benchmarks. If they missed even one, the contract was gone. My last day was quiet. I cleaned out my desk. Terrence found me as I was heading for the exit. "This is wrong, man," he said. "You built this place. You built everything that actually works here." "I built the systems. The systems belong to the company now. But the knowledge?" I tapped my head. "That goes where I go." He laughed, but there wasn't much humor in it. "How long before the whole thing falls apart?" "Depends on how many more brilliant ideas Garrett comes up with. My guess? Serious problems within 8 weeks. Major crisis within 12. It took 9 weeks into my role at Vertex. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Turned out to be Owen, Victoria's CFO. His voice sounded strained in a way that would have been satisfying if I was the kind of person who enjoyed watching people drown. "Dominic, I know we didn't leave things on the best terms, but Victoria asked me to reach out about a potential opportunity." I let the silence stretch just long enough to be uncomfortable. "We've experienced some coordination challenges," Owen continued. "The board is concerned. They're wondering if you'd consider returning in a consulting capacity. Help stabilize operations." Consulting capacity. We'd offer competitive rates. Very competitive. "Owen," I kept my voice level. "You cut my salary by 20% because you thought I was overpriced. Then you eliminated my position entirely. What exactly has changed?" Long pause. "The situation has gotten more complicated than we expected." "You mean the $8.4 million in operational losses?" I kept my voice level. "Owen, I've already heard what's happening. Between a couple old contacts and that FDA warning letter being public record, it's not exactly a secret. 6 carriers walked, 3 hospital networks pulled their business. Everyone in the industry is talking about it." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. "I'm gonna pass," I said. "But I genuinely appreciate the irony of this phone call." I hung up and went back to building something new. At Vertex, things were different in ways I hadn't expected. I had a team that actually wanted to learn. A leadership structure that valued expertise over politics. When I suggested redundant monitoring systems, nobody called them duplicative overhead. When I flagged potential failure points, people took notes and scheduled implementation meetings. When I disagreed with an executive decision, I was thanked for the input. It took some getting used to. The first few weeks, I kept waiting for the catch. Kept expecting someone to tell me my ideas were too complicated. Kept bracing for the dismissive corporate smile that meant my input would be ignored. Instead, I got real questions from people who wanted to understand, who valued expertise instead of treating it like an inconvenience. Danny had become a regular collaborator. His supply chain analysis work complemented my operations planning perfectly. We'd work late sometimes, stress testing scenarios and building protocols that would actually hold up under real-world pressure. The kind of protocols I'd been trying to build at Polaris for years, but kept getting shot down on. You know what I keep thinking about? Danny said during one of those sessions, around week 6. The pretzel guy. Still trying to land the plane? Still pushing buttons? Still completely confident? Still wondering why nothing's working the way the manual says it should? He shook his head slowly. I heard through some contacts that Garrett quit last week. Apparently he blamed everyone but himself and moved on to wreck some other company's operations. Terrence gave his notice at Polaris 2 months after I left. The environment had become unbearable. Every day was putting out fires that shouldn't have started. Every meeting was explaining obvious problems to people who didn't want to hear solutions. He called to ask if Vertex was hiring. "Send me your resume tonight," I said. He started 3 weeks later, running distribution operations for our entire Southeast region. Same responsibilities he'd had at Polaris, but with leadership that actually listened when he raised concerns. Meanwhile, Polaris was hemorrhaging. Their quarterly earnings showed $8.4 million in operational losses. Spoiled inventory, emergency freight, contract penalties, overtime, and client chargebacks. It stacked fast. 6 major carriers had terminated contracts. Not one region. Multiple lanes across the map. Once the first 2 big carriers bailed, the smaller ones followed like dominoes. The FDA issued a warning letter that became public record. 3 hospital networks representing nearly 30% of their client base pulled their business. 6 months after joining Vertex, our cold chain network went fully operational. On-time delivery exceeded industry averages by 12%. Temperature compliance hit 99.7%. We onboarded 3 major hospital clients who specifically cited our reliability and safety protocols as the deciding factor. The Vertex CEO mentioned during a company town hall that our operational improvements had positioned the company to capture significant market share from struggling competitors. He didn't name Polaris specifically. He didn't have to. Everyone in that room understood exactly who he meant. Danny found me afterward in the hallway, grinning. "Dude, you basically got a standing ovation without anyone saying your name. That's like stealth recognition. It's the team. I couldn't have built this alone." "Sure, but the team doesn't exist without your systems. Take the win, man. You earned it." Jules and I had Terrence and his wife over for dinner that weekend. She thanked me for getting him out of Polaris. "He was coming home miserable for months," she said. "Now he actually talks about his day, like he enjoys it." "The granola bar ratings continue at Vertex," Terrence confirmed with a grin. "Though the crisis frequency has dropped a lot. I had to rate a training simulation last week. 4 out of 10. The snack bar selection at headquarters is genuinely disappointing. Honestly, Victoria did me a favor. She thought she was cutting costs. What she actually did was cut me loose from a place that didn't deserve what I brought to the table anymore." Jules squeezed my hand across the dinner table that night. She didn't need to say anything at all. We both knew we'd made it through to the other side. The mortgage was current again. The savings account was rebuilding. The anxiety that had kept us both awake for months was finally fading. Terrence raised his cup of coffee. "To new beginnings! And to whoever invented the granola bar." I looked around the table at the faces of people who'd stuck with me through all of it. I figured that was finally the end of it. Update: 7 months later. 3 months after I started at Vertex, I got a text from an unknown number. "Hey, little brother. Heard that you landed somewhere good. That's great. Really happy for you. Listen, things have been tough at the dealership. Market's brutal right now. I was wondering if you might be able to help with a short-term situation. Just a loan to get through this rough patch. Wade, asking me for money." I read that text twice to make sure I wasn't seeing things. The same Wade who'd mocked me when I asked for help, who said Jules would leave me, who laughed while I was drowning. Now he was the one underwater, and somehow he thought I'd throw him a rope. I deleted the text without responding, blocked the number for good measure. 4 months after that, on a Saturday evening, the doorbell rang. Jules was in the kitchen making dinner. I was half watching some game I didn't care about. Neither of us was expecting anyone. I opened the door. My mother stood on the porch. She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. "Dominic." "Hey, Mom." Neither of us moved to hug. That wasn't how we did things. Maybe it never had been. We stood there for a long moment. "I know we haven't talked," she started. "Wade was out of line that day. I should have stopped him. But you didn't." "No, I didn't." She took a breath. "The dealership is in real trouble. Wade made some bad investments. Extended credit to people who couldn't pay. Took on debt he couldn't handle. The bank is threatening to foreclose." I leaned against the doorframe. "And you're here because you need money. I'm here because you're my son." Because I should have been there for you when you needed help. And I wasn't. Because I don't know where else to turn. Jules appeared in the hallway behind me. Just stood there, letting me know she was there if I needed her. I looked at my mother for a long moment. I'll think about it, I said finally. Her face brightened. But understand something first. I kept my voice level. When I asked you for help, I was asking for a loan. Breathing room. And Wade used it to mock me. Said my wife would leave me. You sat there and watched. I know, I should have. I'll think about it. That's all I'm promising. She nodded. That's more than I deserve. Yeah, it is. She turned to leave. Stopped. Your father would have been proud of you. The career you built on your own terms. I should have said that years ago. I watched her walk to her car and drive away. Some chapters end quietly. Some end with people showing up on your porch asking for what they refuse to give. Either way, what matters is who's beside you when the door finally closes. I got lucky there. Really lucky. Everything else? I earned that the hard way, and I'd do it all again. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. At 13, my dad hit me so hard I woke up in the hospital alone. Mom said, "You made us look bad." My dad disowned me and sent me to boarding school to protect their image. Years later, their world fell apart, and they finally understood what they'd done. Hey Reddit, my parents treated me like a bad investment and worshipped my sister. So I bailed, built my own life, and moved on. But they didn't. Before the real chaos starts, let me take you back to the beginning. My name's Daniel. I'm 37 now. I run a digital forensics firm specializing in audio evidence analysis. Turns out being gaslit your whole childhood makes you good at documentation. One evening, Rachel and I were sitting on the back porch. She had a glass of wine. I had coffee. Sun setting. Quiet. She was quiet for a minute. Then, would you ever tell someone the whole story? Beginning to end? You want to hear it? If you want to tell it. I looked at her. At the house. At the yard we'd built. The life we'd built without them. Yeah, I said. I'll tell you. I went inside and opened the bottom drawer in my office. Pulled out the recorder. The same $3 yard sale recorder that followed me all the way to Vermont. I hadn't used it in years. Brought it back outside and set it on the table between us. Rachel nodded at it. What's that for? Closure, maybe? I said. Documentation. Habit. Emotional support plastic. She smiled. Start whenever you're ready. I hit record. The red light clicked on. I was 13 when I realized my family had assigned roles, and I'd gotten the worst one. Eliza was the product. I was the liability. Everything else was damage control. Back then, I was just a kid with a $3 recorder from a yard sale. Started recording ambient sound, rain, traffic, footsteps, would layer it on my laptop, turn a door closing into music, taught myself production from YouTube. My family thought it was weird. My sister Eliza was 14, rising swim star, butterfly specialist, sponsors calling, college coaches watching. My parents treated her schedule like military operations and her results like stock reports. Mom Lydia was all about image. Favorite line, perception is reality. When I asked about an audio class, what's the perception? That we're raising a kid who plays with toys? Dad Stephen ran an investment firm, talked in ROI terms. When Eliza meddled, that's growth. That's where you put resources. When I brought home a B, that's average. Average doesn't compound. His other favorite, you invest in growth. You cut losses early. Said it about stocks, about clients, about me when he thought I wasn't listening. Eliza knew her position, called my sound stuff creepy, said I was weird for always having a recorder, told her friends I was probably recording them in the bathroom. Wasn't even close to true, but the rumor stuck. Made middle school interesting. She had this way of talking about me like I was something stuck to her shoe. My brother or whatever. The family embarrassment. My parents never corrected her. Week before the garage thing, Eliza had junior state championships. Huge deal. Scouts confirmed. Local news feature. House became a prep zone. My best friend Connor invited me to a maker fair. Sound design workshops. Asked 3 weeks in advance. Day before, Lydia, you're not going tomorrow. Why? Eliza's meet is Sunday. We need Saturday clear. It's once a year. When your hobbies generate scholarships, we can revisit priority. I didn't go. Spent Saturday in my room. Sunday morning, Eliza found me in the hallway. Move. I'm late. Meet's not till noon. Go be weird somewhere else. I'm in a hallway in my own house. Your house? This is my house. You just live in it because they haven't figured out what to do with you yet. She shoved past me. Shoulder checked me into the wall. Went back to my room. Checked the recorder in my pocket. Always kept it on me. Hit record. That recording was about to matter. That night after the meet which Eliza won, Stephen found me in the garage. I'd gone out there to mess with some old speakers I'd been rehabbing. Had my laptop set up on the workbench. Steven came in and closed the door behind him. Walked over and shut my laptop. We need to talk about your attitude. I didn't say anything, just looked at him. Your mother told me about yesterday, how you tried to make Eliza's weekend about yourself. I asked to go to something I'd been planning for months. Planning for months. He said it like I'd claimed to be planning a moon landing. Do you understand resource allocation? This family has finite time and energy. We allocate toward growth. Eliza is growth. She's proven return. Your hobbies without upside. Hobbies without upside. Filed that one away. What do you want me to do? Stop existing? I want you to stop being soft. Stop acting like the world owes you attention. Your sister works. She produces results. You sit in your room playing with a microphone and whining about fairness. I'm not whining. I'm asking for one day. And I'm telling you the answer is no. Do you know what your sister said tonight? She said she was worried you'd do something embarrassing at home while she was competing. That's what you've become. A reputational risk. Right now you're just dead weight. He stepped closer, circled around me like he was evaluating a bad asset, tapped my closed laptop, leaned in. You're overreacting. You're too soft. You're just like your mother. My stomach dropped. Didn't look at his eyes. Looked at his tie knot instead. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop making problems. Stop with the attitude. You're going to fall in line and be grateful for what you have. He put his hand on my shoulder, firm. The kind of grip that says I could push harder if I wanted. I looked at his hand, then at his face. Decided in that moment I was done being grateful for scraps. Or what? His grip tightened, just enough to make a point. Then he shoved. It wasn't a wind-up hit, not some dramatic attempt to injure me. It was the kind of shove you give an object that's in your way. A correction. A repositioning. But I was standing on a stool. Off balance. Wrong angle. The stool wobbled once, then tipped. My foot slipped. My hand missed the bench when I reached for it. And gravity doesn't negotiate. I went backward fast. Heard the metal before I felt it. Tool chest. Sharp corner. Then everything went black. Woke up to fluorescent lights and a heart monitor beep. Head hurt bad. Tried to sit up. Room tilted. Nurse appeared. Easy. Don't move yet. What happened? You had a fall. Hit your head. Memorial Hospital. You've been out 90 minutes. Where's my family? Your father called it in, but we can't reach anyone now. He said your mother was coming, then stopped answering. Emergency contacts aren't responding. They're probably at post-meet dinner for my sister. We need a parent here. She paused. Did someone hurt you? No. I fell. She wrote something on a chart. Left me alone. Lydia showed up 2 hours later. No Steven, no Eliza. Walked in looking annoyed. What happened? Fell in the garage, hit the tool chest. Do you understand what this could look like if someone talks? We're in Eliza's exposure window. Scouts, media. I have a concussion and stitches, and you're worried about optics. Right now, we look unstable. Just don't tell anyone. Minor accident at home. End of story. Sure, I'll protect the brand. Good. Your father's waiting in the car. Early call tomorrow. I didn't trip, Mom. She froze. What? Steven pushed me. Face went blank. That's not what happened. It's exactly what happened. We argued. He shoved me. I fell. You're confused. Head trauma. I'm not confused. Even if something happened, it would have been an accident. That's parenting. He called me dead weight, then shoved me because I had an attitude. Stop. This conversation is over. You fell. That's the story. Try to make it something else, and you'll regret it. I understand perfectly. Steven didn't come into the hospital. Didn't get out of the car when we got home. Just dropped us off. Lydia walked me inside. Told me to go straight to bed. Went to my room. Locked the door. Sat on my bed. Took the recorder out of my pocket. Hit play. The audio was tinny but clear. Heard Steven's voice. Your sister works. She produces results. You sit in your room playing with a microphone and whining about fairness. Then my voice. I'm asking for one day. Steven again. I've invested 13 years into you and I have nothing to show for it. No wins. No distinguishing features. No upside. If you were a portfolio position, I'd have cut you years ago. Silence. Then the shove. The stool scraping. The impact. Wet metal sound. My head hitting the corner. Then nothing. Played it 3 more times. Each time felt calmer. Each time felt clearer. The sound didn't lie. Never had. That's why I loved it. Audio was locked. Time-stamped. Permanent. Started a new audio log that night. Quiet so nobody would hear through the walls. Sunday night. Post-hospital. They're calling it a fall. The recording says otherwise. 13 years I've protected their image. That ends now. I'm done protecting the brand. If they want to pretend we're a perfect family, they can do it without me. Because I've got receipts. First time in months I slept through the night without waking up anxious. Took 6 weeks to decide how to burn it down. Not with rage. Rage is loud and sloppy. What I wanted required math, timing, leverage, probability of fracture. Late night, door locked, house quiet except the pool pump humming under the floorboards. I sat on my bedroom carpet with the recorder and headphones. Played the garage audio again. Paused it right before the impact. Steven's voice came through that tiny speaker. Dead weight. That was the moment something in me recalibrated. They didn't care about truth. They cared about perception. And perception, I realized, was just another system, one I could manipulate. So I opened my laptop, started a new document, and wrote 2 columns at the top. Steven's insecurities, Lydia's insecurities. Not secrets, not dirt, just pressure points. You don't need real affairs to break people like them. You just need them to see each other the way they saw me. When I say I lied, it wasn't dramatic. I didn't forge emails or plant lipstick on collars. I used tiny truths, framed correctly. A late-night text, a receipt left on the counter, a schedule gap, a too-fast explanation. Things everyone does. Things only feel dangerous when trust is already gone. And trust between my parents had never been more than a PR strategy. The first opportunity dropped right into my hands. Lydia's phone buzzed with a text from some guy named Todd. Got your message. Confirmed for tomorrow at noon. Tomorrow was Thanksgiving. When she walked back into the room, I asked, "Who's Todd?" Soft, polite, aiming straight at her weak spot. She froze for half a second, then lied badly about a club volunteer shift. She started keeping her phone face down after that. A couple weeks later, Steven came home earlier than expected, claiming a client call had ended abruptly. I asked about California time zones, not accusatory, curious. He stiffened, because he'd already told Lydia a different story. They fought later. I didn't hear every word, but I heard enough. Money, schedule, trust, the little cracks where people leak. Another day, I accidentally dropped a harmless dinner receipt on Steven's desk where Lydia could see it. Nothing scandalous, just oddly timed. Enough to spark questions. Enough to make them repeat themselves and realize their stories didn't match. By January, they were checking each other's phones, coming home late to prove they weren't the guilty one, sleeping in separate rooms. Not because anyone was cheating. Nobody was. They were just finally seeing each other without the family brand acting as a buffer. It turns out when your marriage is built on image, the smallest smudge looks like a stain. Eliza noticed the tension immediately and hated it. Her swimming times started tanking because she couldn't stand anything that wasn't about her. She blamed both parents, then blamed me. Classic. Mid-February. I heard Steven snapping at Lydia through the vent. "Who is he?" Lydia snapped back. "Who is she?" The insecurity was eating them from the inside out. No affair, no scandal, just 2 brittle people circling each other like threats. Lydia tried family therapy after Eliza threatened to quit swim meets. In the sessions, Eliza talked nonstop about her stress. The therapist asked how I felt. Fine, everything's fine. That was enough for Lydia to cancel therapy entirely. The point had never been healing. It was optics. By April, they filed for divorce. On the surface, it looked clean, professional. Underneath, it was war, finances, custody, reputation scoring. By the time the papers were signed, Eliza's season had collapsed. Scouts disappeared. Sponsors went quiet. And naturally, she blamed me. In June, Lydia decided we needed a unity dinner. The kind of thing you do when you're more worried about what a broken family looks like than what it feels like. Steven stared at his phone the whole time. Eliza performed concern. I sat there waiting. "Daniel," Lydia said. "Anything you want to say?" "Nope, that's not helpful." "I didn't realize I was supposed to be helpful." Steven frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I've spent 13 years being unhelpful, so why start now?" Eliza huffed. "Here we go." Then Lydia leaned forward. "What choices?" So I pulled out my phone and hit play. Steven's voice filled the dining room. Every insult, every blow to my dignity, the shove, the impact, the sound of who he really was when no one was watching. Eliza looked at Steven like he'd just transformed into a stranger. "You shoved him?" Steven pointed at me, desperate. "You manipulated us? The questions? The comments? You wanted us to fall apart." "I lied," I said, "on purpose. Because the truth never mattered to you. Only the version that kept you clean. I didn't invent your worst instincts. I just aimed them." Lydia's voice shook. "What do you want?" "I wanted you to feel what I felt," I said. "Congratulations." Silence. Eliza cracked first. "Fix him. Therapy. Boarding school. Something." Lydia nodded. "You're right. He needs structure." I stood. "I need to be away from all of you." Steven straightened, businesslike. "That can be arranged." And of course it could. People like them are excellent at packaging problems and shipping them out of sight. They didn't send me immediately. Optics first. Lydia bought new polos and khakis, like she was rebranding a product instead of relocating her son. Stephen made me sign transfer forms like he was offloading a failing investment. Eliza didn't speak to me at all. Then late one night, I walked past the kitchen and heard Lydia on the phone with the boarding school. "He's brilliant but difficult," she said. "He has issues with boundaries. He records people and misinterprets things. He can exaggerate." Stephen took the phone. "He responds well to firm systems," he added smoothly. "Clear consequences. That's what he needs." They weren't just sending me away. They were sending the narrative ahead of me. The version where I was the unstable one, the dramatic one, the problem. I didn't confront them. Just walked back to my room, opened a new audio log, and titled it Preloaded Narrative. By August, I was on my way to Vermont. Boarding school was exactly what you'd expect. Old brick buildings, strict schedules, kids whose parents had money and problems. I was there because I'd become inconvenient. School had rules, dress code, curfew, mandatory study halls, restricted computer access, phone privileges based on merit, all of it designed to build character. Reality was, it just built better liars. Rich legacy kids broke rules constantly, got warnings and meetings with advisors. Parents flew in, made donations. Problem disappeared. I got written up my second week for being 10 minutes late to breakfast. Got dorm restriction for 3 days. When I pointed out that Camden Pierce had been 2 hours late the day before, the advisor said comparing myself to others wasn't productive. Learned fast. The system protected who it wanted to protect. Made one friend first semester. Guy named Leo. Scholarship kid from Providence. Noticed I kept to myself. Started sitting with me at lunch. "You always have that thing?" Pointed at the recorder clipped to my bag. "Yeah." "What's it for?" "I record sound. Make audio projects." "That's weird." "So I've heard." He grinned. "Cool weird or creepy weird? Depends who you ask." We started hanging out. He'd work on coding projects in the library while I edited audio in the AV booth. Didn't talk much. Didn't need to. December, someone stole my recorder from my bag in the locker room. 2 days later, I heard my own voice coming from the common room. Group of juniors playing a recording through a speaker. Audio log I'd made in October. Private stuff. About the garage. About the divorce. Should have kept the personal logs on my laptop. But habits die hard. They were laughing, doing impressions. Walked in. Room went quiet. "Where'd you get that?" "Found it." "You stole it from my bag." Finders keepers. Felt the same click from the garage. Cold, clear. Left the common room. Went straight to the dean's office. Told him what happened. He said he'd look into it. I said I wanted it handled now. Went back to my dorm. Started documenting. Who was in the locker room that day? Timeline. Who was in the common room playing the audio? Exact quotes. Timestamps. Created a whole file. Printed it. Took it back to the dean with a list of witnesses. "This is impressive detective work. It's documentation. There's a difference. Most students would have just let it go. Most students aren't used to being gaslit." He looked at me. "Fair point. I'll handle it." He did. All 4 juniors got dorm restriction. 2 got suspended. I got my recorder back. Got a reputation too. The weird, quiet kid who responds to problems like he's filing a lawsuit. People left me alone after that. Found my actual home in the campus radio station. Tiny booth in the basement of the arts building. Station manager was Mr. Phillips. Taught digital media. Noticed me hanging around. "You know how to use a mixing board?" "Yeah." "Prove it." Played him a project I'd made. Layered field recordings from different parts of campus. Built it into something that sounded like music. He listened all the way through. Nodded. "You're hired. Tuesdays and Thursdays 4 to 6. Don't make me regret this." Didn't. Spent those afternoons in the booth. School gave me special access through the radio program. Learned broadcast equipment. Produced segments. Made audio essays about random stuff. Mr. Phillips never gave compliments. But he trusted me with keys to the booth and let me come in outside my scheduled time. That was better than praise. Holidays were weird. Thanksgiving, nobody came to get me. Lydia texted saying she was taking Eliza to a training intensive in Florida. Stephen said he had client commitments. Spent Thanksgiving with 12 other kids whose parents had better things to do. Cafeteria staff made a dinner. Tasted like cardboard. Mr. Phillips invited me to his house the next day for leftovers. His wife was nice. Didn't ask why I was there. Just served pie and talked about normal stuff. By spring, I'd become the go-to person for tech stuff. Started teaching myself more advanced techniques. Got good at isolating specific sounds from noisy environments. Cleaning up distorted audio. Building coherent clips from fragments, Mr. Phillips noticed. Told me I should think about forensics, audio analysis, legal work. Makes sense. I've been collecting evidence against my own family since I was 13. He didn't laugh, just nodded. Then use it. Take the thing they tried to beat out of you and turn it into something they can't touch. End of the year, Lydia called. First time in 4 months. Asked how school was going. Cool. Glad he told you since you never asked. Don't be like that. I'm calling now. Why? Because I'm your mother. Pause. Are you coming home for the summer? Is Eliza going to be there? Yes. Then no. I'll find a summer program. You don't want me home anyway. That's not true. It is true. You sent me here because I stopped protecting the family image. Let's not pretend this is about caring. Silence. Then, I'll wire money for the summer program. Send me the details. Hung up. Found a 6-week program at a state college. Audio production intensive. Applied. Got in. Money showed up in my account 3 days later. No follow-up call. Just cash and silence. College was straightforward. State university. Good program. Studied media forensics with a focus on audio analysis. Learned the technical side. Spectral analysis. Frequency isolation. Authentication protocols. Chain of custody. How to make recordings admissible in court. Also studied law. Pre-law track. Graduated with honors. Got into law school. Specialized in digital evidence and electronic discovery. Graduated again. Passed the bar first try. Didn't go into litigation. Went into consulting. Started my own firm. Digital forensics. Audio-video analysis. Evidence authentication. Turned out there was a market for that. Turned out being the quiet kid who documents everything was exactly what firms needed. Someone who could build cases that held up. First few years were small cases and long nights. Did good work. Got referrals. Slowly grew. Then one big healthcare fraud investigation put us on the map. Needed someone to analyze thousands of hours of recorded calls to find evidence of coordination between executives. Took me 4 months. Found the patterns. Built the timeline. Testified as an expert witness. Their case held up. My fee was 6 figures. After that, growth was steady. More corporate clients. Bigger cases. Higher fees. Hired staff. Moved into a real office. Built a proper lab with high-end equipment. Made my first 7-figure year. Bought a condo downtown. Still kept it quiet, though. Didn't post online. Just worked. Met Rachel. She worked in corporate compliance for a pharmaceutical company. They hired us to analyze some internal investigation recordings. She was the point person. Professional. Direct. Didn't waste time. We clicked. Started getting coffee between meetings. Then dinner. 6 months in, she moved in. Year later, I proposed. She said yes immediately. Planning the wedding was when my family found out I existed. I'd kept them blocked on everything. Changed my number twice. They had no idea where I was or what I was doing. Lydia sent letters to my last known address for a couple years, then stopped. Steven sent one email through his lawyer when I turned 25 about some trust fund paperwork. Signed the forms. Sent them back. Never heard from him again. Until they saw the article. Local business magazine did a profile on rising firms in the area. Included my company. Picture of me in my office. Talked about our case record. Our client list. Week after it published, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. Subject line was long time. Daniel, it's your mother. Saw your article. We had no idea you were doing so well. So proud of you. Would love to reconnect. We have some things going on and could really use your support. Call me. Didn't respond. 2 days later, got a Facebook message. I hadn't posted in years, but I still had an old account I never bothered deleting. Eliza had created a new account. Added a bunch of mutual connections from my past. Started posting old photos of us as kids. Captions about missing her brother. Comments from people asking where I'd been. Her replying that I'd had some struggles and needed space, but she was hoping to reconnect now that I was stable. Then Stephen showed up at my office. Receptionist called back. Sir, there's a Stephen Garrett here. Says he's your father. Tell him I'm in meetings. He says he'll wait. Call security if he doesn't leave in 5 minutes. Heard her relay the message. Then her again. He's asking for 5 minutes. Says it's important. Walked out to the lobby. Stephen was standing by the desk. Suit. Gray hair now. Looked older. Still had that same expression, though. Assessing, calculating. You need to leave. Daniel, good to see you. You're trespassing. I'm your father trying to have a conversation. You're a stranger trying to leverage family connection for something you want. What is it? He glanced at the receptionist. She was pretending not to listen. He lowered his voice. Eliza's having some issues. Legal trouble. Doping scandal. Sponsors dropped her. Now there's talk of lawsuits. She needs someone who understands evidence. She should hire a lawyer. She has lawyers. She needs someone who can vouch for her character. I can't vouch for her character. Haven't seen her in over a decade. You're her brother. Biologically, that's it. Your mother's struggling financially. The divorce settlements ran out. She's behind on bills. Then she should budget better. Don't be cold. I'm not cold. I'm realistic. You taught me that. ROI. Resource allocation. Cutting losses. I'm just applying your lessons. This is different. It's exactly the same. You decided I was low upside and divested. Now you're back because you need something. That's not family. That's you using people. We made mistakes. You're trying to use me. Now leave before I have you removed. Stood there, stared at me. Seemed like he was trying to decide whether to push harder. Chose not to. Walked out. Rachel asked about it that night. Told her the basics. She didn't say much. Just listened. Then, they're going to keep trying. I know. You want me to handle it? Yeah, do that. She did. Set up filters on my work email. Updated building security. Made sure front desk had photos and instructions. No access without appointment. But they kept trying. Lydia started calling people I'd worked with, saying she was my mother, that she was worried about me, that she wanted to reconnect but I was shutting her out. One of my clients mentioned it, said my mom had called, seemed really distressed. I thanked them and said we were estranged, and to please not share my contact info. Eliza posted on social media that she was going through a hard time and needed family support. Tagged old photos of us. People commented asking if I knew, if I was helping. She replied that she'd reached out, but I was focused on my career. Stephen sent a formal letter through his lawyer, not a legal threat, just a letter saying he wanted to discuss a business opportunity. Ignored all of it. Then Lydia showed up at the building. Rachel called me from the lobby. Your mother's here. Security stopped her. She's refusing to leave unless she sees you. Tell her I'm not available. She's making a scene, crying. People are recording. Went downstairs. Lydia was in the lobby, performance mode, tears, tissue, small crowd watching, saw me and reached out. Daniel, finally, I've been trying to reach you for months. And I've been ignoring you for a reason. I'm your mother. You're someone I used to know. How can you say that? I raised you. You exiled me. There's a difference. She looked at the crowd, playing to them. I made mistakes. I'm trying to make amends, but you won't even talk to me. We're talking now. Here's the conversation. Leave. Don't come back. Don't contact my firm. Don't call my colleagues. Anything you need to say can go through counsel. You'd really do that? You cut me off first. I'm just maintaining the boundary you established. Security moved in. Ma'am, you need to leave. Rachel was waiting upstairs. That was rough. That was typical. You okay? Yeah, let her spin it. Your clients know you. That night, I recorded an audio log. First one in years. April 3rd. Family showed up. Stephen at the office, Lydia at the building, Eliza online. All of them running variations of the same play. Weaponize connection. Leverage guilt. Frame me as the problem. They taught me to cut losses early. Now they're mad I did exactly that. Rachel's locking things down. We're getting married in 8 weeks. I'm not letting them ruin it. Planning the wedding was simple. Small ceremony. Close friends. Rachel's family. Mr. Phillips from boarding school even offered to walk me down. Rachel handled most logistics. I handled tech setup, sound system, backup recordings. 6 weeks out, Rachel set up vendor passwords. Every vendor required a password to make changes. Florist, caterer, DJ, venue coordinator. Simple protocol. No changes without the password. Why are we doing this? Because your family's desperate and desperate people sabotage. You think they'd go that far? I know they would. Your family's already shown they'll manipulate and perform. This is just protecting what's yours. 4 weeks out, Eliza posted online about family heartbreak. Said she was going through legal issues and her brother refused to help. Posted a throwback photo of us as kids. Comments flooded in. People saying I was cold. Didn't respond. Just screenshot it. Documentation. 3 weeks out, Stephen sent a letter to my office. Not a threat. An offer. Said his firm had several clients interested in digital forensic services. Transparent. He wanted access. Wanted leverage. Sent back one line, no thank you. 2 weeks out, Lydia started calling Rachel's office. Said she wanted to send a gift. Needed the wedding registry. Rachel's assistant said we didn't have one. Lydia asked for the venue and date. Assistant said she couldn't share that without authorization. Lydia got upset. Eventually hung up. 1 week out, things escalated. Venue coordinator called. Said someone claiming to be my mother had called and tried to cancel the reservation. Coordinator asked for the password. Caller couldn't provide it. Coordinator refused the cancellation. Caller got aggressive. They tried it with the caterer, florist, and DJ too. Same script, same password failure, same anger. They'd clearly gotten the vendor list somehow. Probably called every venue and vendor within 50 miles until they found matches. Desperate people get resourceful. Rachel called me. They're escalating. I know. They'll show up. Already on it. Venues adding staff. Anyone not on the list gets turned away. And I'm putting together a legal notice. Cease contact. Cease interference. If they push further, we'll file. 3 days before the wedding, Eliza called from an unknown number. Daniel, it's Eliza. How'd you get this number? Doesn't matter. I need to talk. We don't have anything to talk about. You're getting married and you didn't even tell me. You're someone I used to live with. That's it. I'm going through hell right now. The doping case, the sponsors, the lawsuits, and you're acting like it's not happening. Because it's not my problem. I'm your sister. You're Stephen and Lydia's daughter, the golden child. I was the loss they cut. You reminded me of that constantly growing up. You don't get to play family now. She switched tactics. Voice got smaller. Daniel, I made mistakes. I was a kid. You were old enough to shove me and call me dead weight. Old enough to demand they fix me when I stopped playing along. People change. Great. Change somewhere away from me. I'm coming to the wedding. No, you're not. Security has your photo. You show up, you'll get removed. You can't do that. I can, and I did. Hung up. Called Rachel. She's going to show up. I know. Venue's ready. Day before the wedding, we stayed at a hotel near the venue. Kept it quiet. Didn't post anything. Rehearsal dinner went smooth. Small group. Good food. Mr. Phillips gave a short toast about watching me grow from a defensive kid into someone who built truth into a career. Rachel's dad gave a toast about trusting someone who documents everything. Everyone laughed. Wedding day started early. Photographer arrived. Got some shots. Everything running on schedule. Rachel's sister pulled me aside 90 minutes before start time. Security just turned away your mother. Was she alone? No. Your sister was with her. What happened? They showed up. Said they were family. Security checked the list. They weren't on it. Your mother started crying. Performed the whole thing. Your sister started recording on her phone. Security stayed calm. Told them they needed to leave. They refused. Security called police. Squad car showed up. They left. They're going to post about it. Probably, but they're gone. Ceremony started on time. Music was perfect. Rachel looked perfect. Vows were simple and real. Officiant pronounced us married, kissed. Everyone clapped, felt like winning. Reception flowed smooth. Cocktail hour. Music. Drinks. Food came out on time. During dinner, Rachel's mom leaned over. Someone's causing a scene in the lobby. I stood up. Rachel grabbed my hand. Let security handle it. Just want to see. Walked to the entrance. Stephen was there. Suit. Serious face. Talking to security. I need to speak with my son. Sir, you're not on the guest list. It's his wedding. I'm his father. This is private property. You're trespassing. Stephen saw me in the doorway. Daniel, please, 5 minutes. Didn't move. Didn't speak. Security blocked him. Sir, final warning. I flew out here. I've been trying to reach you for months. I am. Leave. After everything, we're still your family. No. You're people I used to know who only show up when you need something. That's not family. That's strategy. And you taught me to cut bad strategies early. Sir, I'm calling the police now. Stephen backed down. Fine. I'm leaving. But this isn't over. It's been over since I was 13. You're just catching up. He left. I thanked security and went back to the reception. Rachel looked at me. You good? Perfect. Rest of the night was clean. Speeches, dancing, cake. No more interruption. Just us and people who'd actually chosen to be there. Left for the honeymoon next morning. 2 weeks in New Zealand. Phones off. No emails. Just hiking and quiet and Rachel. Checked messages when we got back. 67 emails flagged. 15 voicemails. All family related. Then 3 voicemails from Eliza that escalated. Third one threatened to contact my clients and tell them about my family issues. Rachel was in the room when I played them back. That's harassment and attempted interference with business. I know. Want me to loop in the lawyer? Yeah. Called our lawyer. She'd already prepared the legal notice while we were gone. Reviewed it. Added the new voicemails as evidence. Filed the same day. Notice was specific. No contact. No third-party contact. No use of my name in any public statements or social media posts. No contact with my clients. Violations would result in legal action, including restraining orders. Sent copies to Lydia, Stephen, and Eliza via certified mail. 2 days later, Eliza posted on social media that she was being legally silenced by her own brother. Her comments filled up with support. People calling me cruel. Rachel screenshot it all. Called the lawyer. Lawyer sent a follow-up letter. Clarified that posting publicly about the legal notice constituted continued harassment. Reminded her of consequences. Eliza deleted the post. Went quiet for 3 days. Then her doping case hit the news. Turned out she'd been using banned substances through most of her college career. Testing caught it retroactively. Sponsors officially dropped her. College revoked her records. Athletic Association banned her. Media covered it. Coaches distanced themselves. Stephen's firm got pulled in because they'd handled sponsorship contracts. Questions about whether they'd known. Their insurance company got involved. Whole thing became a mess. Lydia tried to spin it online as family stress caused by estrangement. Our lawyer sent another letter. Clarified that attributing Eliza's choices to my boundaries was defamatory. Lydia took the post down. Locked her account. Steven sent one final email, said he accepted that I wanted distance, that he respected boundaries, very measured, very professional. Didn't respond. Month later, Eliza's case settled. She paid fines, accepted the ban, issued a public apology, didn't mention family, just took responsibility. Rachel and I bought a house 6 months later, suburb just outside the city, 3-bedroom, yard, quiet street, neighbors who didn't know anything about my family. Set up a home office, soundproofed it properly, built a small studio space, still did audio work on the side, personal projects, the stuff I'd always loved. Company kept growing, hired more staff, opened a second location, reputation held, work stayed steady. Heard through the grapevine that Steven's firm had taken a hit from the Eliza situation, lost some clients. He was still operating but smaller. Heard from an old neighbor that Lydia had moved, downsized, living in a condo now, working part-time. No idea what Eliza was doing. Didn't look, didn't care. When I finished narrating the story, Rachel was quiet for a second. Then, so what happened next? This. We sat here and I started telling you. That's what happened next. And now? Now we move on. Reached over and stopped the recording. Saved the file, backed it up. Then put the recorder back in the drawer. Rachel stood up. Ready for bed? Yeah. We went inside. Locked the doors. Turned off the lights. Went upstairs. The recorder went back in the drawer. That's where the past stays. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. At the airport gate, my sister slapped me in front of everyone because I wouldn't give her my first-class seat to Hawaii. So, I canceled her entire trip and exposed every lie she'd ever told our parents. Hey Reddit, my sister physically assaulted me at an airport gate because I refused to downgrade myself so she could fly first class on a trip I paid for. What happened next destroyed her completely. Buckle up because this one's a ride. I'm Jake, 32 male, and I've spent the last decade building a career as a petroleum engineer in West Texas. Not glamorous work. Mostly analyzing drilling data, optimizing extraction rates, and spending weeks at remote sites where the nearest civilization is a gas station 40 miles away. The job means long stretches in the field, living in company housing that's basically a glorified trailer, eating microwave dinners, and working 12-hour shifts in weather that ranges from blazing hot to freezing depending on the season. But it pays extremely well, like 6 figures well, and I've been smart with money since my first paycheck. No fancy car payments, no luxury apartment in the city, no trying to impress people with expensive watches or designer clothes. I drive a practical truck, live modestly, and bank most of what I earn. My sister Vanessa, 28 female, took a spectacularly different path. She's what she calls a lifestyle influencer, which apparently means posting photos of smoothie bowls and sunset meditations to her 8,000 followers while dispensing advice about manifesting abundance and finding your authentic self. The reality is less Instagram-worthy. She lives with our parents in the same bedroom she had in high school, works part-time at a boutique selling overpriced candles and throw pillows, and has never paid rent in her entire adult life. Her contribution to household expenses is posting pictures of mom's cooking and tagging local businesses for exposure. Our parents, Frank and Linda, are retired teachers who live comfortably but not extravagantly in the same 3-bedroom house in suburban Austin where we grew up. They spent 30 years dealing with budget cuts, difficult parents, and standardized testing nonsense. Dad taught history and coached baseball. Mom taught elementary school and somehow maintained her sanity, despite dealing with second graders and their helicopter parents for 3 decades. They're good people who worked hard their whole lives and deserve better than they got, which is why I decided to do something about it. Last year, I closed a major consulting contract, analyzing drilling efficiency for a mid-sized oil company. The project took 6 months of 18-hour days and weekend work, but came with a substantial bonus. The kind of bonus that makes you think about buying a boat you'll never use or upgrading to a truck with features you don't need. Instead, I decided to take my parents on their dream vacation to Hawaii. They'd talked about visiting the islands for as long as I could remember. Mom had this coffee table book about Hawaiian beaches that she'd page through during winter, sighing over turquoise water and palm trees. Dad had files of articles about Pearl Harbor and Hawaiian history saved on his computer, but teacher pensions don't leave much room for expensive vacations, and they'd always prioritized practical things like fixing the roof or replacing the water heater over tropical getaways. I booked us a week in Maui. Nothing extravagant, but nice. A hotel right on the beach with an ocean view, a rental car so we could explore the island, and enough in the budget for good restaurants and activities. I researched everything. Best snorkeling spots, scenic drives, local restaurants that weren't tourist traps. For myself, I booked first class. At 6 feet 3 inches and 210 pounds, 6 hours in a coach seat isn't just uncomfortable, it's medieval torture. My knees jam into the seat in front of me. I can't straighten my legs, and I always end up with my shoulders cramped from trying to fit into a space designed for people 8 inches shorter than me. So yeah, I paid extra for the legroom and comfort. I'd earned it. My parents got premium economy. Not first class, but better than coach. More legroom, better seats, actually decent food. They were thrilled. Mom called me 3 times after I sent her the itinerary just to say how excited she was. Here's the important part. Vanessa wasn't originally part of this trip. She hadn't been invited, wasn't consulted, wasn't even mentioned during the planning process. I deliberately organized this as a gift specifically for my parents. A thank you for putting up with public school bureaucracy for 30 years, and for supporting me through engineering school when money was tight. This was their trip, their reward, their vacation. But somehow, about 2 weeks before departure, Vanessa knew every detail. She knew the dates, the airline, the hotel name, even what activities I'd booked. And she decided, unilaterally without asking, that she was coming too. The campaign for inclusion started during our regular Sunday dinner at my parents' house. I'd driven 3 hours from the current drill site, still covered in dust and smelling like diesel, just to spend the weekend and finalize trip details with Mom and Dad. I'd barely walked through the door when Vanessa cornered me in the kitchen. "So I've been looking at the Hawaii trip," she said, scrolling through her phone with perfectly manicured nails. "There are some amazing content opportunities there. This waterfall near Hana that would be perfect for my wellness series. And the sunrise at Haleakala? Incredible lighting for photos." I was exhausted from the drive and not in the mood for whatever angle she was working. "That's great, Vanessa. Have fun planning your own trip." She looked at me like I'd suggested something absurd. "My own trip? Jake, I'm talking about our family trip, the one you planned." "The trip I planned for Mom and Dad, not you." Her expression shifted to hurt confusion, which was her go-to move when someone didn't immediately give her what she wanted. "Why wouldn't I be included? I'm family." "Because I didn't invite you. This is a gift for our parents, not a group vacation." "That's pretty hurtful," she said, voice getting that tremble that meant she was gearing up for emotional manipulation. "Are you saying I'm not part of this family?" I explained that wasn't what I was saying at all. I was saying I'd planned a specific trip for specific people, and adding someone at the last minute complicated logistics, messed with reservations, and changed the entire dynamic of what was supposed to be a relaxing vacation for 2 people who'd earned it. "You don't think I've earned a vacation?" she countered. "I work hard too, you know." Vanessa's version of working hard was posting 3 photos a day and occasionally showing up to her boutique shifts when she felt like it. But pointing that out would just start an argument. So I tried a different approach. "I'm sure you work hard in your way, but this trip is planned, paid for, and organized for 3 people. I'm sorry you weren't included, but that's how it is." She stared at me for a long moment, clearly running through her options for manipulation tactics. Then, she walked into the dining room where our parents were setting the table and announced in a voice trembling with manufactured sadness, "Jake says I'm not invited to the family Hawaii trip." Mom's face immediately showed concern. "What? Jake, what's she talking about?" And just like that, I was the bad guy. Not Vanessa for inviting herself to something she wasn't part of, but me for enforcing a boundary. Dad tried to mediate. "Let's all sit down and talk about this calmly." Over pot roast that I'd lost my appetite for, Vanessa laid out her case. She felt excluded. She felt like I didn't value her as a sister. She felt like I was using money to create divisions in the family. Every statement was carefully crafted to make me sound like a villain while positioning herself as the victim. "I just want to spend time with my family," she said, eyes glistening. "Is that so wrong?" Mom looked torn. "Jake, honey, maybe we could make room for one more? It would be nice to have everyone together." "Everyone is together," I replied. "The 3 people I invited." "You're being pretty rigid about this," Dad observed, trying his diplomatic teacher voice. "What's the real reason you don't want your sister there?" The real reason was complicated. It was years of watching Vanessa get special treatment while I was expected to be responsible. It was every time I'd bailed her out financially, which happened at least twice a year. It was the way she treated every family gathering like a photo opportunity for her social media instead of actual quality time. It was knowing that if she came, the trip would stop being about Mom and Dad and start being about Vanessa's content creation needs. But saying all that would make me sound petty and jealous. So I went with something simpler. I planned a trip for 3 people. Adding a 4th person this late means reorganizing everything. I can pay my own way, Vanessa announced, which would have been more impressive if she hadn't borrowed $300 from me 2 months earlier that I still hadn't seen returned. Mom jumped on that. See? She'll pay her own way. Problem solved. I could see where this was going. If I kept refusing, I'd be the unreasonable one, the rigid, controlling brother who couldn't be flexible for his sister. They'd worn me down like this my whole life. Vanessa would create a situation, I'd object, and eventually I'd give in because it was easier than being labeled as difficult. Fine, I said, already regretting it. I'll book you an additional room at the hotel, but you're paying for your own flight, all your meals, and any activities you want to do. This isn't an all-expenses-paid vacation for you. Is that clear? Vanessa's face transformed from wounded sadness to triumphant joy. Of course. Thank you, Jake. You won't even know I'm there. I'll do my own thing most of the time anyway. That should have been my first clue that this was going to be a disaster. The next week passed in a blur of work and final travel preparations. I coordinated with the hotel about the additional room, which cost me extra because I'd booked during a promotional period that had since expired. I sent Vanessa the flight information and hotel details, explicitly reminding her that she needed to book her own airfare. She sent back a thumbs-up emoji. I assumed that meant she'd handled it. 2 days before departure, at 5:47 in the morning, my phone rang. I was already awake. Early shifts on drill sites meant being functional before sunrise, but barely coherent enough for conversation. "We have a situation," Vanessa announced without preamble or greeting. "What kind of situation?" I asked, pouring coffee and mentally preparing for whatever crisis she'd created. "The flights are all screwed up. I looked at booking, and the only seats available on your flight are in basic economy way in the back. Like row 38. That's not going to work." I reminded her that millions of people flew coach every single day and survived the experience. 6 hours in a normal airplane seat wouldn't kill her. "You don't understand," she said, and I could hear the edge of panic in her voice. "I need to be on the same flight for the family arrival photos. My followers expect that kind of content. But I can't post photos from a terrible seat in the back of the plane. The lighting is awful back there, and it looks cheap." The audacity of that statement hit me like cold water. She was complaining about seat quality on a flight she'd been told to book herself, for a trip she'd invited herself to, because it wouldn't look good enough for her 8,000 Instagram followers. "Vanessa, that's not my problem. You knew you needed to book your own flight. You waited too long, and now you're dealing with the consequences." But I assumed you'd coordinate with me. I thought you'd block out seats for the whole family. Why would you assume that? I specifically told you to handle your own flight booking, because that's what family does." Her voice was rising. "They coordinate. They make sure everyone has good seats together." I pointed out that family also doesn't invite themselves to trips and then complain about the arrangements she'd known for weeks that she needed to book a flight. If she'd wanted a better seat, she should have booked earlier. "This is so typical of you," she snapped. "You have all this money and you can't even help your sister out with a decent seat." "Help you out? Vanessa, I didn't even invite you on this trip. You invited yourself, promised to pay your own way, and now you're mad that the consequences of booking late mean you have a coach seat. That's not my problem to solve." "You're being a selfish jerk," she said. "My followers expect a certain level of quality. If I post content from a terrible seat, it damages my brand, her 8,000 follower brand that had never made her a dime in actual income, her brand that existed primarily in her own mind as justification for living rent-free and working part-time. Figure it out," I told her. "I need to get to work." She hung up without saying goodbye. I figured she was mad, but would eventually book the ticket, and we'd all deal with the seating situation when we got there. I should have known better. Vanessa never just accepted situations she didn't like. The morning of departure arrived with that mix of excitement and exhaustion that comes with 4 a.m. wake-ups. I drove to my parents' house to pick them up, my truck loaded with luggage and snacks for the drive to the airport. Mom and Dad were already waiting on the porch when I pulled up, sitting on their matching suitcases like kids waiting for the school bus. Mom had bought a new sundress specifically for the trip, floral print with palm trees. Dad was wearing his Hawaiian shirt, which was actually from Target, but he loved it anyway. They'd been counting down days for months, crossing dates off the kitchen calendar, and planning what they'd do first when we landed. Seeing their excitement made the early wake-up and long drive worth it. These were people who'd spent 30 years in classrooms, dealing with budget cuts and standardized testing pressure, and parents who thought their kid was a genius, even though little Jaden couldn't read at grade level. They deserved this vacation more than anyone I knew. We got to the airport with plenty of time to spare. Check-in went smoothly, bags were tagged and loaded, and we headed towards security, feeling good about the day. That's when Vanessa appeared. She looked like she'd gotten maybe 90 minutes of sleep. Her usually styled hair was in a messy bun, with strands sticking out at odd angles. Her makeup was smudged under her eyes. She was dragging an enormous suitcase that was definitely over the size limit, and she had this frantic energy that immediately set off alarm bells. "There you are," she said, slightly out of breath. "I've been texting you for an hour." I deliberately silenced my phone for the drive, wanting to enjoy the conversation with Mom and Dad without constant interruptions. "What's going on? We need to talk, right now, before we go through security." I suggested we could talk at the gate after security, but she insisted we needed to handle this immediately. Something about her tone made it clear this wasn't going to be a quick conversation. Dad looked concerned. Mom had that expression she gets when she knows conflict is coming and wants to be anywhere else. "What's so urgent?" I asked. "The seating situation. We need to fix it before we board." I reminded her we'd already discussed this multiple times. She was in economy, we were in our assigned seats. That was the arrangement she'd agreed to when she joined the trip. "That arrangement isn't going to work," she said firmly, like she was being reasonable instead of demanding. "I need a better seat for the flight content. My followers expect quality photos, and row 38 doesn't provide that." "Then you should have booked earlier." I'm trying to explain that I need to be in a better seat for the photos. The whole flight is content opportunity, and I can't create quality content from the back of the plane. Dad tried to help. "Vanessa, honey, maybe you could just enjoy the flight instead of worrying about photos. Sometimes it's nice to just be present in the moment." "Dad, you don't understand how this works. I have followers who expect consistent quality. If I post terrible airplane content, it damages my credibility. People might unfollow me." Mom chimed in with her peacemaker voice. "Maybe we could check with the airline about upgrade options? They sometimes have last-minute seats available." "I already checked," Vanessa said. "There's nothing available in premium economy or first class. Every seat is sold except the terrible ones in back. The only solution is if someone gives me their seat." She was looking directly at me when she said it. "Let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You want someone to give up their paid seat so you can take photos for Instagram? Not just someone You're in first class, which has the best lighting and background for content. If you give me your seat, the problem is solved." The sheer audacity of that request left me momentarily speechless. She wanted me to give up the first-class seat I'd paid for, on the trip I'd organized and funded, so she could take better photos for strangers on the internet. That's not happening. "Why not? You're tall, but you can handle coach for one flight. I actually need the seat for my work. This is literally my career we're talking about. Your career is working part-time at a boutique selling overpriced candles. Instagram is a hobby." Her face flushed red. "You're such a jerk. You have all this money. You have this successful career, and you can't do one small thing to help your sister succeed?" "Giving up my seat isn't a small thing. I'm 6 feet 3 inches, and I paid specifically for first class because coach is torture for 6 hours. And I'm asking you to make a small sacrifice for family. But I guess your comfort is more important than supporting my career goals." People were starting to stare at us. A family with small children moved to the other side of the waiting area. A businessman in a suit looked up from his laptop and frowned. Dad looked mortified. Mom was studying her boarding pass like it contained the secrets of the universe. I told Vanessa one final time, calmly, clearly, that I was not giving up my seat. She could either accept the seat she'd booked or miss the flight entirely. Her choice. "Fine," she said, voice tight with barely contained rage. "We'll see how Mom and Dad feel about their son being selfish and unsupportive when we're all in Hawaii. I'm sure they'll love knowing their son cares more about legroom than his own sister's career." We proceeded through security without further incident. I thought maybe the reality of the situation had finally penetrated, and she'd accepted that her manipulation hadn't worked. I was spectacularly wrong about that. At the gate, my parents and I settled into the waiting area. Dad pulled out his book about Hawaiian history. Mom scrolled through her phone, looking at restaurant recommendations I'd sent her. I sat back and tried to relax, thinking the drama was behind us. Vanessa paced near the windows, typing furiously on her phone, probably complaining to her friends about her terrible brother who wouldn't sacrifice his comfort for her important influencer career. About 30 minutes before boarding was supposed to start, she approached us again. Her jaw was set in that particular way that meant she'd decided on a course of action and wasn't backing down. This was Vanessa in full manipulation mode, and I'd seen it enough times to recognize the pattern. "I've been thinking about this," she started, voice taking on that reasonable person tone she used when she'd decided she was right and everyone else was wrong. "And I really need you to reconsider the seating situation. This trip is important to me, and you're ruining it before we even take off." I didn't even look up from my phone. We're done talking about this. No, we're not done. You're being incredibly selfish and someone needs to say it to your face. Dad tried to cut her off. Vanessa, let it go. We're all going to the same place. The seats don't matter. Stay out of this, Dad. This is between me and Jake. I closed my phone and looked at her directly. There is no between us. I'm flying first class in the seat I paid for. You're flying coach in the seat you booked late. That's the end of this discussion. You really don't care about me at all, do you? Her voice was getting louder, drawing attention from other passengers. You'd rather sit in your fancy seat with all that legroom than help your own sister? You'd rather be comfortable than supportive. I'd rather enjoy the vacation I planned and paid for without your manufactured drama and constant demands for special treatment. Manufactured drama? You think this is manufactured? I'm trying to build a career, and you're sabotaging me because you're jealous. Jealous of what, exactly? Your 8,000 followers? Your part-time job selling candles? Your complete inability to function without someone else paying your way? That's when she lost it completely. You entitled piece of trash, she screamed at full volume. The entire gate area went silent. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Kids stopped crying. Even the gate agents looked up from their computers. You think you're so much better than everyone because you have some engineering degree and make good money. You look down on me because I chose a different path. Two gate agents started moving in our direction. Dad stood up quickly, hands out in a calming gesture. Mom had her hand over her mouth, eyes wide. I chose a creative path instead of selling out to corporate oil companies, Vanessa continued, her voice echoing through the terminal. But you can't see value in anything that doesn't come with a paycheck. You're shallow and materialistic and selfish. Before I could even form a response, before Dad could step between us, before anyone could intervene, Vanessa drew back her hand and slapped me across the face with her full strength. The sound echoed through the terminal like a gunshot. Silence fell over the entire gate area like a heavy blanket. My left cheek burned where her palm had connected. My glasses had shifted sideways from the impact. Every single passenger in that boarding area stopped what they were doing and stared at us. Parents covered their children's ears. Business travelers looked up from their laptops. The elderly couple who'd been sharing a muffin just stared, mouths slightly open. A gate agent appeared at my elbow within seconds. Ma'am, I need you to step back right now. Vanessa was breathing hard, her hand still raised slightly, the reality of what she'd just done starting to register on her face. Her eyes were wide, like she couldn't quite believe she'd gone that far. He deserved it, she said, but her voice wavered. He's been treating me like garbage all morning. He provoked me. Two airport security officers materialized seemingly out of nowhere. One positioned himself between Vanessa and me. The other started asking questions in that calm, professional tone that people in authority use when dealing with potential violence. Sir, are you all right? The first officer asked me. My face was throbbing. My cheek felt like it was on fire, but I nodded. I'm fine. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with us. The second officer told Vanessa. What? No, we have a flight to catch. I can't miss this flight. You just assaulted another passenger in front of approximately 70 witnesses and two gate agents. You're not flying anywhere today. The meltdown that followed was spectacular in its desperation. Vanessa started crying. Real tears this time. Not the manufactured ones she used for manipulation. She insisted it was a misunderstanding, that I'd provoked her, that she couldn't miss this flight because it was a family vacation, and her parents would be devastated if she wasn't there. The officers weren't impressed. They'd clearly seen plenty of airport tantrums before, and Vanessa's wasn't unique or compelling. They just stood there professionally while she cycled through denial, anger, bargaining, and finally sobbing acceptance. They escorted her away from the gate, still crying and protesting. A gate agent approached me with paperwork and a practiced, sympathetic expression. We need to file an incident report, she explained, pulling out a tablet. Standard procedure for any physical altercation in the terminal. Are you interested in pressing charges? I should have said no. Should have been the bigger person. Taken the hit. Literally. And written it off as Vanessa being dramatic. Should have let her actions slide like I'd let everything else slide for the past 28 years. But I looked at my mom, who was crying quietly, at my dad, whose face showed embarrassment and disappointment, at all the passengers who'd witnessed my sister assault me in public, because I wouldn't give up a seat on a vacation I was paying for. Yes, I said clearly. I'm pressing charges. The gate agent nodded and made notes on her tablet. Within minutes, Vanessa's name was flagged in the airline's computer system. She wouldn't be flying on this airline today, or possibly any airline depending on how the charges played out, and whether she ended up on a no-fly list. Mom was distraught. She grabbed my arm, mascara running down her face. Jake, maybe we should all stay. We can't just leave Vanessa here alone dealing with this. She's not alone, I said firmly. She's with airport security, and she made her own choices. We're getting on this plane. We're going to Hawaii. We're having the vacation I planned and paid for. But she's your sister, and she assaulted me in public because I wouldn't give her my seat. I'm not rewarding that behavior by canceling a trip I've spent months planning and thousands of dollars funding. Jake's right, Dad said quietly, putting his arm around Mom. Vanessa crossed a line today. We can't enable this anymore. She needs to face consequences for once in her life. Mom started to protest, but Dad's expression stopped her. After 30 years of marriage, she recognized when he'd made a decision he wasn't backing down from. Boarding started. First class was called. First I stood up, grabbed my carry-on, and headed for the gate agent scanning boarding passes. Behind me, I could hear Mom crying softly. Dad was murmuring something to her, probably trying to calm her down. Part of me felt guilty for not staying, for not being the family peacemaker who fixed everything and made sure everyone was happy. But a bigger part of me was done being that person. Done sacrificing my comfort, my boundaries, my plans for the sake of keeping peace with someone who'd never once considered my feelings. I settled into my first-class seat. The flight attendant brought warm nuts and drinks. I put in my earbuds, selected a movie, and tried to ignore the guilt trip texts from Vanessa that were already filling my phone before we even took off. The flight attendant made her announcements. The plane pushed back from the gate, and we left Vanessa behind, dealing with airport security and the consequences of her own actions. Mom cried for the first hour of the flight. I could see Dad holding her hand from my seat, could see him talking to her quietly, probably reassuring her that this wasn't her fault, that they were doing the right thing by not enabling Vanessa's behavior anymore. By hour 2, they'd pulled out the guidebook and started discussing which beaches to visit first. By hour 3, they were looking at restaurant recommendations and getting excited about trying traditional Hawaiian food. By hour 4, Mom had stopped crying entirely and was actually laughing at something Dad said. Turns out removing Vanessa from the equation improved the trip significantly before it even started. We landed in Maui to perfect weather. 84 degrees, light breeze, endless blue sky. The rental car was exactly what I'd reserved, running smoothly and clean. The hotel was right on the beach, just like the photos. Our rooms had ocean views and comfortable beds and everything we could possibly need. That first sunset, watching my parents walk along the beach holding hands and taking photos together, reminded me exactly why I'd planned this trip. This was what I'd wanted. My parents relaxing, enjoying themselves, experiencing something beautiful without stress or conflict. Vanessa sent approximately 200 texts during our first day. They ranged from furious to manipulative to self-pitying, cycling through every emotional manipulation tactic she'd perfected over the years. Hope you're happy. I'm stuck at home while you're all in Hawaii without me. Mom is devastated. You've completely ruined this family. The assault charges are going to cost me thousands in legal fees. Thanks for destroying my life over a stupid seat. I can't believe you do this to your own sister. You're heartless. Dad said they might have to post bail if I get arrested. You're literally putting our parents through hell. I turned off my phone and focused on the vacation. The next 3 days were everything I'd hoped they'd be. We snorkeled at Molokini Crater, where Mom saw a sea turtle and cried happy tears. We drove the road to Hana, stopping at every waterfall and scenic overlook to take photos. We watched the sunrise at Haleakala, standing on top of a dormant volcano while the sky turned colors I didn't have names for. We ate at restaurants with ocean views where Dad tried every type of fresh fish they had, and Mom fell in love with pineapple upside-down cake made with actual Hawaiian pineapples. We took a helicopter tour and saw parts of the island that most tourists never access. We spent an entire day just lounging on the beach, reading books, and swimming and napping under an umbrella. My parents were having the time of their lives. Mom took approximately 800 photos on her phone. Dad bought a carved tiki statue that he planned to put in their garden. They held hands during dinner, laughed at each other's jokes, and looked more relaxed than I'd seen them in years. On day 4, Dad and I were having breakfast on the Hotel Lanai when he brought up the situation back home. Your mother wants to know if you'll drop the charges against Vanessa, he said carefully, not quite making eye contact. No. He nodded like he'd expected that answer. She slapped you in public. I'm not excusing that. But you're her brother, and this could have serious legal consequences for her. Maybe even jail time or a criminal record. Dad, she assaulted me in an airport because I wouldn't give up my seat. She invited herself on this trip, promised to handle her own arrangements, then demanded I sacrifice my comfort for her Instagram photos. When I said no, she physically attacked me in front of dozens of witnesses. Why would I drop the charges? He sighed and looked out at the ocean. Because she's family. Because your mother is worried sick about what happens next. Because even when people make terrible choices, sometimes we choose forgiveness over punishment. Mom has been worried sick about Vanessa her whole life, worried about her grades, her job situation, her finances, her emotional state. Meanwhile, nobody worried about me because I had my act together. Nobody checked if I was okay, if I needed support, if the constant pressure to be the responsible one was wearing me down. That's not fair, Dad said quietly. We love you both equally. You love us equally, but you've never treated us equally. Vanessa has gotten away with behavior you never would have tolerated from me. She's 28 years old, lives at home rent-free, works part-time, and you still make excuses for her. Meanwhile, I was expected to be responsible and mature from the time I was 15. He didn't have a response to that. We sat in silence for a while, watching waves crash against the shore. You're right, he finally said. We made mistakes raising both of you. We held you to different standards, and that wasn't fair. But she's still your sister, and this could really hurt her future. Her actions hurt her future, not me. I'm just refusing to protect her from the consequences of assaulting someone in public. Dad nodded slowly and didn't bring it up again. Mom tried a different approach during dinner that night. She suggested that when we got back, we could all sit down as a family and work through this. Maybe Vanessa needed support rather than punishment. Maybe she was struggling more than we realized. Maybe there were underlying issues driving her behavior. I pointed out that struggling doesn't justify assault. Plenty of people have difficult lives, financial stress, career uncertainty, and mental health challenges without physically attacking their siblings in airports. She's always been sensitive, Mom said, like that explained anything. She's 28 years old. Being sensitive doesn't excuse violent behavior. At some point, she needs to be held accountable for her actions. You're really not going to drop the charges? No, Mom, I'm not. She looked disappointed and sad, but she didn't push further. The rest of dinner passed quietly, with occasional comments about the food or plans for the next day. By day 6, my parents had stopped bringing up Vanessa entirely. They were too busy enjoying the vacation to focus on drama happening thousands of miles away. We took a catamaran sailing trip where we saw dolphins. We attended a traditional luau with fire dancers and roasted pig. We rented bikes and rode along the coast, stopping for shaved ice and photos. The morning of day 7, our last full day before flying home, Dad knocked on my hotel room door around 7 a.m. Got a minute to talk? He asked. We sat on the balcony overlooking the ocean. He was quiet for a long time, just watching surfers paddle out to catch early morning waves. Your mother and I have been talking, he finally said. About Vanessa, about how we raised you two differently, about the unfair expectations we placed on you. I waited, not sure where this was going. You're right about everything you said. We did enable her. We did hold you to higher standards while making excuses for her behavior. We thought we were helping her by being supportive and understanding, but we actually created someone who doesn't know how to handle disappointment or take responsibility for her actions. Yeah, I'm sorry we put you in that position for so many years. Sorry we expected you to be the mature, responsible one while letting her act like a child. That wasn't fair to you, and it didn't help her either. We failed both of you in different ways. It was the first real apology I'd gotten from either parent about the lifetime of double standards I'd lived with. Thanks, Dad. That means something. Are you still going to press charges? Yes. He nodded without surprise. Good. She needs to face real consequences for once in her life. Maybe this will finally be the wake-up call she needs. We sat together watching the sunrise, and for the first time in years, I felt like my dad actually understood me. The flight home was peaceful. My parents talked enthusiastically about planning another trip, maybe to Alaska or the Canadian Rockies. Mom showed me her favorite photos from the week, already planning which ones to print and frame for their living room. Dad had bought 3 books about Hawaiian history that he'd already started reading. They were happy, genuinely, deeply happy. And I realized that if Vanessa had come on this trip, none of that happiness would have been possible. She would have turned every activity into a photo opportunity, every meal into content creation, every family moment into something performative for her followers. Leaving her behind had been the right choice. When we landed back in San Antonio, reality came crashing back fast. Vanessa had been busy during our Hawaii trip. She'd hit social media hard, painting herself as the tragic victim of family cruelty. According to her carefully crafted sob story, she'd been abandoned during a mental health crisis and excluded from a family vacation by her vindictive brother, who was pressing excessive charges over a minor disagreement. Her followers ate it up. I started getting messages from strangers calling me heartless and abusive. Someone even tracked down my work email and filed a complaint about my violent tendencies. The irony was almost funny. She'd assaulted me, but somehow I was the villain for pressing charges. Thing is, Vanessa made one critical mistake. She'd posted her lies publicly, creating a permanent record that was about to bite her hard. Because I had something she didn't. Evidence. Airport security had given me the surveillance footage as part of the incident report. Multiple angles showing everything. Vanessa escalating, getting in my face, witnesses backing away, the slap, the shocked reactions. No context needed. No he said, she said. Just clear footage of her assaulting me while I stood there trying to stay calm. I posted the video with a simple caption. Since there seems to be confusion about what happened, here's the actual security footage. I was assaulted for refusing to give up my first-class seat. Not manipulation. Just facts. Judge for yourselves. The response was brutal. People who'd been sending me hate messages went silent. Vanessa's followers who'd been defending her started demanding explanations. The comments on her posts flipped from supportive to accusatory. Within hours, Vanessa tried damage control, claiming the video was out of context and that I'd been emotionally provoking her off-camera. Nobody bought it. The evidence was too clear. Her follower count dropped like a stone. Within 48 hours, she'd lost over 2,000 followers. Small brands quietly distanced themselves. The boutique where she worked part-time let her go after the owner saw the video. Within a week, she deleted most of her social media and basically vanished from the internet. Mom called, upset that I'd humiliated Vanessa by posting the video. She humiliated herself, I said. All I did was post the truth. She's lost everything she'd been building. She lost credibility she never deserved. Maybe she'll learn that actions have consequences. The assault charges moved forward. Vanessa tried to fight them, but the evidence was overwhelming. She eventually took a plea deal. Guilty to simple assault, 1-year probation, 40 hours community service, and restitution for my legal fees. She also got flagged by that airline and several others, making future air travel a nightmare for her. My parents slowly came around. They stopped making excuses and stopped expecting me to sacrifice my boundaries. Dad and I started having actual conversations. Mom sent me recipes, small things showing they were starting to see me as a person, not just the responsible son who fixed problems. Vanessa and I don't talk anymore. Last I heard, she'd moved to Phoenix, working customer service for some online retail company, living in a small apartment with a roommate. No more influencer dreams. No more living rent-free. No more expecting other people to fund her lifestyle. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. My brother ruined my 3-year relationship. Said it just happened. Family told me to move on. So I moved on from the family business I'd been holding together for years. I'm 32, sitting here in my new apartment, 3 months removed from the nuclear bomb that went off in my family. Figured it was time to get this off my chest because, honestly, some of you might think I went too far. Most of you will probably say I didn't go far enough. Either way, here's how I systematically destroyed my family's finances after discovering my brother had been sleeping with my girlfriend for our entire 3-year relationship. Let me start with the family dynamics because that's important context for understanding why I did what I did. My younger brother Tyler has always been the golden child. Not in the subtle way where you wonder if you're being paranoid. I'm talking about the kind of favoritism so blatant it would make a sitcom writer say tone it down. That's unrealistic. Growing up, I was the responsible one. Got good grades without being asked. Helped around the house. Had a part-time job by 15. Standard older sibling stuff that nobody particularly noticed or appreciated. Tyler, though? Different rules entirely. Failed 3 classes his junior year of high school. English, history, and algebra. Not even hard classes. Dad's response? He's just not challenged enough. We should look into advanced placement courses. The kid who couldn't pass basic algebra was apparently ready for AP calculus. That lasted 1 week before he dropped out, claiming the teacher had it out for him. Got caught shoplifting a pair of headphones from Target when he was 16. $200 noise-canceling ones. Security caught him walking out. Mom's take. Just a phase. Boys will be boys. They didn't press charges, so really, was it that serious? No punishment. No making him work to pay it back. Nothing. I got a 2-week grounding when I was 15 for coming home an hour past curfew because I was helping a friend whose car broke down. I called ahead. Explained everything. Didn't matter. Rules are rules. But shoplifting was just boys being boys. When Tyler was 17, he crashed Dad's truck into a mailbox while joyriding. Absolutely demolished it. Totaled the front end. About 8 grand in damage. Had 3 friends in the car, was going probably 50 in a 25. Dad's response? Accidents happen. That's what insurance is for. When I was 17, I accidentally scratched mom's car door with my bike. Tiny scratch, maybe 3 inches. Had to pay for the repair out of my summer savings. Different standards, same family. Then there was the college money situation. Dad had set aside about 40 grand for each of us. Mine went to tuition and books. Tyler burned through his in 1 year on living expenses and partying, then dropped out. Did Dad make him pay it back? Nope. Tyler moved back home rent-free, and Dad kept slipping him money for failed business ventures. The real kicker is how this followed us into adulthood, because at least when we were kids, you could argue Tyler was young and stupid. But the favoritism didn't stop when we became adults. It got worse. I worked my rear end off to get through college. Took out loans, worked 2 part-time jobs, graduated with a finance degree, and landed a solid position as a financial analyst at a mid-sized firm. Nothing glamorous, but I made decent money and was climbing the ladder. By 26, I'd bought my own place, paid off my car, had actual savings sitting in investment accounts. I was doing everything right according to the responsible adult playbook. Tyler dropped out of college after 1 year, said the traditional education system was too restrictive for his entrepreneurial spirit, then bounced between business ventures that never worked. First was a pressure washing business. Made Dad buy him a $3,000 commercial pressure washer, trailer, and advertising. Did maybe 3 jobs. Made about $400 total, then stopped returning calls. Too much physical work. Equipment sat in Dad's garage for 2 years. Then, a vending machine empire. Watched some YouTube guy talking about passive income and became convinced. Bought 4 machines on credit, placed them in terrible locations. An abandoned strip mall. A gym that already had 3 machines. 2 office buildings where he didn't ask permission and got kicked out after a week. Lost 6 grand total. Next was cryptocurrency trading. Convinced Dad to give him 10 grand to invest. Lost 9 grand in 3 months buying random coins because Reddit said they'd moon. Kept the remaining grand for a new phone. Then social media consulting. Made an Instagram account, charged $500 to manage businesses' social media. Got 2 clients, both family friends. Posted maybe twice a month. Random stuff with nothing to do with their businesses. Ghosted when they asked for refunds. Every failed business was bad timing, or people didn't understand his vision. Every job he quit, and he went through probably 7 or 8, was because his boss couldn't handle his innovative ideas. Sold phones at Verizon for 3 months before quitting, because they expected him to meet sales targets. Worked at a gym for 5 weeks before getting fired for constant lateness. He lived in Mom and Dad's basement until he was 25, rent-free, contributing nothing. And the whole time, Mom would defend him at Sunday dinners. Tyler's just finding his path. He's an entrepreneur. These things take time. I'm sitting there thinking, I found my path just fine. Nobody gave me 5 years of free rent to figure it out. But here's where it gets relevant to the story. 3 years ago, Dad asked me to help him restructure his construction company's finances. He'd built a decent business over 30 years, mostly residential renovation and small commercial projects. But he was old school about money management. Everything was in his head or scribbled on paper napkins. No real systems in place. His idea of bookkeeping was a shoebox full of receipts and a checkbook he balanced maybe twice a year. I spent 6 months of nights and weekends setting up proper bookkeeping systems, created spreadsheets for project tracking, implemented QuickBooks, established relationships with better suppliers who gave us volume discounts. I renegotiated contracts with subcontractors, identified which projects were actually profitable versus which ones were just keeping guys busy. I saved him probably 80 grand that first year, just by streamlining operations and cutting waste. His thank you? A handshake. And that's what family does. No payment, no equity, not even a Christmas bonus. Just the expectation that I'd keep doing it because we're family. And like an idiot, I did. Fast forward 2 years, and Dad decides to semi-retire. He's 62, wants to step back, travel with Mom, maybe play some golf. Totally reasonable. Any guess who he brings on as his successor? That's right, Tyler. Despite my brother having exactly 0 experience in construction, project management, or running a business. Despite me having basically served as the unpaid CFO for 3 years. I'd been managing the finances for free this whole time, saving the company tens of thousands per year. But Tyler got the actual title, the $75,000 salary, and Dad put his name on half the business ownership. Just handed him 50% of a company worth probably $1.2 million at the time. When I pointed out that I'd basically been doing executive-level work without pay for 3 years, Dad said you have your own career. Tyler needs this more than you do. Right. Because that's how business succession should work. Give it to the person who needs it most, not the person who's actually qualified or who's been keeping the ship afloat. But I let it slide because I'm a doormat who kept thinking family should mean something. Now let's talk about Rachel, my ex-girlfriend. Met her 4 years ago through mutual friends at a barbecue. She was fun, smart, worked as a dental hygienist, had this laugh that could light up a room. We just clicked. Started dating pretty seriously after a couple of months. I introduced her to my family around month 3. Looking back, that was probably when everything went sideways. Tyler laid on the charm immediately. This is his specialty, being the charismatic, funny, life-of-the-party guy. While I'm the boring one who talks about spreadsheets and retirement accounts. I remember him pulling me aside that first dinner and saying, "Dude, she's way out of your league. How'd you manage that?" I laughed it off because I thought he was joking. Stupid me. Over the next 3 years, Rachel got really involved with my family. She'd go to their Sunday dinners even when I had to work late. She'd help Mom with holiday cooking, went on shopping trips with my aunt, attended Tyler's birthday parties even when I couldn't make it due to work. I thought this was great. My girlfriend getting along with my family, integration, commitment, all the things you want in a serious relationship. Looking back, there were signs. Little things that didn't quite add up, but I explained away because I trusted her. Like how she always wanted to sit next to Tyler at family dinners instead of me. Said it was because I was always getting up to help Dad with something, so she didn't want to be stuck between empty chairs. Made sense at the time. Or how she started dressing differently for Sunday dinners. Nicer, more makeup, always did her hair. But when we went out, just the two of us, she'd show up in jeans and a t-shirt with no makeup. I thought maybe she was just trying to impress my parents. Didn't occur to me she was trying to impress my brother. She'd text Tyler about random stuff. "Hey, what was that restaurant your family went to last month?" I'm trying to remember the name. Or send him memes during the day that she wouldn't send me. When I asked about it once, she said Tyler was just funnier than me. Laughed it off like it was a joke. I laughed too. Idiot. There was this one time about a year into our relationship where I came home early from work and Rachel was at my apartment. She wasn't supposed to be there. Said she'd let herself in to surprise me with dinner. Sweet, right? Except nothing was cooking, no ingredients out. And she was coming out of my bedroom looking flustered, her hair messed up, adjusting her shirt. Said she'd been taking a nap and I'd startled her. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? Found out later from the messages that Tyler had been there. They'd been hooking up in my bed and I came home earlier than expected. He'd apparently hidden in my closet while she talked to me, then snuck out after I went to the bathroom. They thought it was hilarious. Laughed about it in the messages. Close call, LOL. Your brother's clueless. She and Tyler became particularly friendly on social media. They followed each other, which whatever, normal. But Tyler would comment on all her photos. Looking good. Fire emoji. Outfits on point. That kind of stuff that should have been a red flag, but I wrote off as him being friendly. She'd do the same on his posts. Hyping up his gym photos, his new car, whatever. They had more interaction online than she and I did. Then, there were the work excuses. Rachel's schedule as a dental hygienist was pretty regular. Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, occasional Saturday morning. But she started picking up a lot of overtime. Or at least that's what she told me. Working late, covering for sick coworkers, going in on weekends. I supported it because we were saving for a house. More money was good. Turned out most of that overtime didn't exist. She was with Tyler. They'd meet up while I was at work. Or she'd tell me she had plans with her girlfriends and go see him instead. 3 years of this. 3 years of elaborate lies and excuses, and me just accepting it all because I trusted her. My best friend Jordan tried warning me about 6 months ago. We were watching the game at his place, and he brought it up casually during a commercial break. "Hey man, not trying to start anything, but has Rachel been acting weird lately? Like, distant?" I thought about it. She had been less interested in spending time together. Picked more fights over stupid stuff like me working late or how I loaded the dishwasher. Was on her phone constantly, always tilting the screen away when I walked by. But I'd been busy with work and helping Dad, so I figured we were just in a bit of a rut. Every relationship goes through phases, right? I told Jordan we're fine, just busy. He didn't push it, but he gave me this look. The look that says, "I tried to warn you." The truth came out 3 months ago in the most pathetic way possible. I was at my parents' house on a Wednesday afternoon, helping Dad with some paperwork for a big commercial bid. Tyler was supposed to be at a job site, overseeing a kitchen renovation. Rachel was supposed to be working an afternoon shift at the dental office. I was in the home office when I heard noises upstairs. Footsteps, voices, laughing. I figured maybe Dad was up there, so I went to check. That's when I heard them. In Tyler's childhood bedroom, which he still used when he stayed over. Rachel's voice, very clearly not alone. Then Tyler's laugh. That stupid laugh he does when he thinks he's being clever. I stood there in that hallway for probably 30 seconds while my brain refused to process what I was hearing. Then something clicked. Not the explosive anger you see in movies. The cold, calculating kind that makes you think clearly for the first time in years. I pulled out my phone and started recording audio through the door. Got about 2 minutes of very incriminating evidence. Couldn't make out every word, but enough. Then I walked downstairs, got in my car, and drove home. Didn't confront them. Didn't burst through the door. Just collected evidence and left. That night, I went through Rachel's laptop while she was in the shower. I know, invasion of privacy. But screw it at that point. My gut was screaming at me, and I needed to know the truth. My hands were shaking as I opened her laptop. She didn't even have it password protected when she was home. Trusted me completely. Ironic. Found the messages almost immediately. She wasn't even trying to hide them. Just regular texts, not even a hidden app or anything. Scrolled back through months of conversations. Then years. My stomach dropped as the dates kept going back. Back past our anniversary. Back past last Christmas. Back past the vacation we took to the coast. Back to almost the beginning of our relationship. The messages were disgusting. Not just the sexual stuff, though there was plenty of that. Graphic details about what they did, where they did it, when they did it. But it was the way they talked about me that really cut deep. He's so boring in bed. Like missionary with the lights off and that's it. Does he ever just do something spontaneous, or is everything scheduled in his phone? Your brother's cute, but he's basically a robot. Seriously, I think he has his socks organized by color. Who does that? Tyler's responses made it worse. He won't find out. He's too busy with work and that family business stuff. Sometimes I feel bad, but she clearly prefers me. Can't blame her, lol. Honestly, dude's got no game. I'm doing him a favor by keeping her entertained. Otherwise, she'd have left him by now. There were messages about specific times. That time, they'd hooked up during Thanksgiving while I was helping Dad carve the turkey. The Christmas when I'd been shopping for Rachel's present, and they'd snuck off to Tyler's car in the driveway. My birthday party last year when I thought Rachel and Tyler had both disappeared to get more ice and drinks. They'd been together in the garage. The messages talked about family gatherings like they were cover for their affair. Sunday dinners were perfect because I was always distracted helping Dad or talking with uncles. Holiday parties meant they could disappear for 20 minutes without anyone noticing. My apartment was their favorite spot because I worked predictable hours and they knew exactly when it was safe. Found out they'd done it in my bed at least a dozen times. In my car twice when Rachel borrowed it. Once in the guest bathroom at my parents' house during a family barbecue while I was outside grilling. There were close calls documented. Times I almost caught them. Times they thought I was suspicious. But every time, Tyler would just be extra friendly to me, and Rachel would be extra affectionate for a few days, and I'd drop it. They talked about me like I was some kind of game to be played. A puzzle to work around. The timeline was damning. First flirty message was dated about 2 months after Rachel and I started dating. Just testing the water stuff. Your brother's lucky to have you seemed innocent enough until you saw Tyler's response. He's lucky to have her. Maybe I should get lucky too. First actual meetup was 3 months in. Tyler's apartment. Rachel told me she was having a girls' night. I took screenshots of everything. Hundreds of messages spanning 3 years. Backed them up to 3 different cloud services. Downloaded them to a flash drive. Made sure I had copies that couldn't be deleted even if Rachel figured out what I'd done. Then I went further. Checked her phone records online. We were on a family plan, so I had access. Saw thousands of texts and calls between her and Tyler. Late night calls while I was asleep. Texts during my work hours. Calls from parking lots and random locations. Then I did something that surprised even me. I didn't confront Rachel. I kept acting normal. Took her out to dinner that weekend. Was pleasant and normal. Even slept with her. All while planning my exit strategy. 2 weeks later, I had everything arranged. New apartment leased and ready. Movers scheduled. Bank accounts separated. I even changed my passwords and security questions on everything. Then I planned the family dinner. Told Mom I wanted to host a Sunday dinner at my place for a change. She was thrilled. Thought it meant I was finally getting serious about family. Invited everyone, Mom, Dad, Tyler, Aunt Linda, Uncle Frank, even my cousin who I barely talked to. Rachel, of course, said she'd love to come. The night of the dinner, I set everything up nice. Ordered catering so nobody could say I didn't make an effort. Had drinks ready, music playing, the whole deal. Everyone showed up in a great mood. Tyler brought craft drinks. Rachel brought a dessert. Everyone acting like we're one big happy family. We got through appetizers and small talk. Then, right as we were sitting down to eat, I stood up with my glass like I was going to make a toast. So I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. There's something I need to share with the family. Mom smiled, probably thinking I was going to propose or announce a promotion. Tyler looked mildly interested. Rachel looked confused. I've learned something important over the last few weeks. Family is supposed to mean something. Trust is supposed to mean something. But apparently I've been operating under different definitions than the rest of you. The room got quiet. Dad put down his fork. 3 years. That's how long my brother and my girlfriend have been sleeping together. 3 years of family dinners where you all sat here, probably knowing, definitely suspecting, and nobody said a word. Rachel's face went white. Tyler's went red. Mom actually gasped. I pulled out my phone and started playing the audio I'd recorded. Just 30 seconds of it. Enough for everyone to hear exactly what I'd heard in that hallway. Then I pulled up the screenshots on my TV. Dated messages. 3 years worth. Let everyone get a good look. Tyler tried to talk first. Dude, I can explain. Things just happened. We didn't mean for... Save it! Things don't just happen for 3 years. That takes planning, coordination, lying to my face at every family gathering while you were screwing my girlfriend. Rachel was crying. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I was going to tell you. I swear. I just didn't know how. You had 3 years to figure out how. You chose not to. That's called a decision, not a mistake. The room was dead silent. Everyone staring at their plates, or at me, or at each other. Nobody defending me. Nobody looking angry on my behalf. Just uncomfortable silence. Finally, Dad spoke up. This is obviously a difficult situation, but we're family. We need to work through this calmly. Getting angry isn't going to help anyone. I laughed. Actually laughed. Work through this calmly? You want me to calmly work through 3 years of betrayal? What do you want us to do? Mom asked. Tyler made a mistake. Rachel made a mistake. But destroying the family over this seems extreme. There it was. There. The response I'd been expecting but still couldn't quite believe. Don't cause drama. Keep the peace. Protect Tyler because that's what we've always done. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just done being the family doormat. Done being the responsible one who sacrifices while Tyler gets handed everything and screws it up. Done pretending family means unconditional support when it's really just conditional based on how convenient I am. Tyler stood up. You're being dramatic. Yeah, we messed up. But you're going to throw away your whole family over this? Watch me. I walked to the door and opened it. Everyone out. Now. Dinner's over. Nobody moved at first. Then Rachel started gathering her things, still crying. Tyler looked like he wanted to argue, but Mom grabbed his arm. They filed out one by one. Dad tried to say something as he passed, but I just shook my head. After they left, I sat in my apartment, surrounded by catering food nobody had eaten and felt. Nothing. No anger, no sadness. Just clarity. The next day, I sent an email to Dad. Formal, professional. Effective immediately, I was resigning from any involvement with the family business. All the systems I'd set up, all the supplier relationships, all the financial tracking. Done. I'd send over documentation for how everything worked, but I wouldn't be providing any ongoing support. His response came 2 hours later. This is childish. You're hurting the business to get back at Tyler. Think about what you're doing. I thought about it for 3 years while you handed Tyler a company he wasn't qualified to run. I thought about it every Sunday dinner where I helped for free while Tyler collected a salary. I thought about it plenty. This is me being done thinking about it. The business fell apart faster than I expected. Turns out Tyler's management style of showing up late, ignoring problems, and hoping things work themselves out doesn't scale well. First major disaster was the Henderson project. Big kitchen renovation for a repeat client. Should have been straightforward. $8,000 budget, 2 weeks timeline. Tyler was supposed to oversee it. He showed up to the job site exactly twice. Didn't order materials until the crew was already there waiting. Ordered the wrong cabinets, had to reorder, which took another week. Hired a plumber who did such a shoddy job, they had to rip everything out and start over. Project that should have taken 2 weeks stretched to 6. Client refused to pay the full amount, threatened to sue. Dad had to eat a $3,000 loss just to keep the relationship. Then, there was the Morrison commercial job. Small office build-out. $20,000 contract. Tyler bid it without actually calculating material costs or labor hours. Just threw out a number that sounded good. Turned out his number was about 30% too low. They lost $8,000 on that job. When Dad asked Tyler about it, Tyler said he was trying to be competitive to win the bid. Didn't understand that winning a bid you lose money on isn't actually winning. Within a month of me leaving, they'd lost 2 major clients entirely. One because Tyler missed 3 consecutive deadline extensions. The client literally told Dad they couldn't work with someone so unreliable. The other because Tyler showed up to a meeting unprepared, couldn't answer basic questions about the timeline or budget, and tried to wing it with vague nonsense that made the client question if we even knew what we were doing. The new bookkeeping system I'd set up? Tyler didn't understand it and didn't bother learning. Just went back to Dad's old shoebox method. Receipts everywhere. No tracking of job costs. No idea which projects were profitable. I'd built this beautiful spreadsheet system that tracked everything: materials, labor, overhead, profit margins. Updated automatically. Tyler looked at it once, said it was too complicated, and went back to keeping everything in his head, just like Dad used to do. Suppliers started demanding payment up front because Tyler had burned through all the goodwill I'd built. I'd spent 2 years building relationships, always paying on time, being straight with people about timelines. Tyler would order materials, promise payment in 30 days, then forget about it until they were calling looking for money 60 days later. One supplier actually showed up at the shop demanding payment before they'd unload lumber Tyler had ordered. Dad had to write a check on the spot. Tyler burned through money like it was going out of style. He'd order materials without comparing prices. I used to spend time getting quotes from 3 different suppliers, finding the best deal. Tyler would just call whoever answered first and order whatever they had. Paid probably 20% more on materials across the board. He'd hire subcontractors without vetting them. I had a list of reliable contractors we'd worked with for years. Fair prices, quality work, showed up on time. Tyler would hire whoever posted on Craigslist or whoever he met at a bar. Ended up with a crew that didn't show up half the time, did sloppy work the other half, and charged premium rates. He approved change orders without understanding the financial impact. Customer would ask for something extra. Tyler would say, "Sure, no problem," then forget to actually bill for it. I found out later he'd given away probably $15,000 worth of additional work because he didn't want to seem difficult. The shop itself became a disaster. I used to keep the inventory organized, knew what we had, what we needed to order. Tyler just let everything pile up wherever. Materials for 3 different jobs mixed together. Tools left out in the rain. Equipment not maintained. A $15,000 tile saw broke because nobody bothered to clean it after use and the motor seized up. Projects went over budget constantly because Tyler didn't track costs properly. He'd tell a client it would cost 12 grand, then spend 17 without noticing until the job was done and there was no money left. No contingency planning, no buffer for problems. Just blind optimism that everything would work out. Dad had to come out of semi-retirement just to keep things from completely collapsing. At 64 years old, he was back to working 60-hour weeks, getting up at 5 a.m. to open the shop, staying until 7 p.m. to finish paperwork. Tyler should have been handling, working Saturdays to fix Tyler's messes from the week. His hands were killing him. His back was hurting. He looked exhausted every time I saw him, and I felt nothing about it. Mom called me after about 2 months. "Your father's exhausted. This needs to stop. You're hurting him to hurt Tyler." I'm not hurting anyone. I'm simply not helping anymore. There's a difference. If the business can't function without me providing free labor, that's not my problem. That's a business model problem. Family is supposed to help each other. Family is also supposed to not screw each other over. Funny how you're worried about me helping now, but weren't worried about 3 years of betrayal. She hung up on me. Around month 3, I got a call from Tyler. First time we'd spoken since the dinner. He was desperate. "Dude, I know I messed up. I know I screwed up bad. But can we please just put this aside and you help Dad? The business is drowning. You're asking me to put aside 3 years of betrayal so I can save a business that was handed to you for free? The business you're tanking because you have no idea what you're doing? I'll step back. I'll leave the business entirely. Just please help Dad. Not my problem anymore. You wanted the business. You got it. Figure it out. You're destroying Dad's legacy over a girl. I'm watching you destroy it with incompetence. I'm just not cleaning up your mess anymore. Big difference." He called me some names and hung up. Blocked my number. Whatever. Over the next few weeks, I systematically rebuilt what I could of my own life. I'd been doing consulting work on the side for a while, helping small businesses with financial planning and operations. Just a few hours here and there, mostly for friends of friends. But I had a knack for it. I could look at a business's books and see exactly where they were bleeding money, where they could cut costs, where they could optimize. I turned that into a full-time thing. Set up a proper LLC, built a website, Reached out to my network. Turned out a lot of people needed help and were willing to pay for it. My first real client was a small HVAC company that was doing okay revenue-wise, but couldn't figure out why they weren't profitable. Spent 2 weeks analyzing their operations. Found out they were losing money on service calls because they weren't factoring in drive time and vehicle costs. Restructured their pricing model. They went from barely breaking even to 15% profit margins in 3 months. Paid me $8,000 for 2 weeks of work. Word spread. Got a referral to a landscaping company with similar issues. Then a small restaurant group that couldn't understand their food costs. Then a dental practice that wanted to expand, but didn't know if they could afford it. Each project paid between $5,000 and $15,000 depending on complexity. I was making in 1 month what I used to make in 3 at my analyst job. The work was actually interesting. Every business had different problems. Some needed better pricing strategies. Some needed to cut overhead. Some needed to restructure their operations entirely. I'd come in, analyze everything, build them custom spreadsheets and tracking systems, train their staff, and leave them set up for success. Within 6 months, I had 6 steady clients on retainer. Monthly consulting fees ranging from $2,000 to $5,000 each, plus project work that came in regularly. I was pulling in about $15,000 a month before taxes, 3 times what I made at my analyst job. Working maybe 30 hours a week instead of 50. Started turning down work because I was too busy. Had to raise my rates to filter out the people who weren't serious. Went from $150 an hour to $250. Didn't lose a single client. Actually got more interest because apparently higher prices signal higher quality. Moved into a nicer apartment. 2-bedroom place with a real office, gym in the building, parking spot. Treated myself to a new car. Nothing crazy, but nice. Comfortable. The kind of thing I'd always wanted but felt guilty about buying when I was giving my time away for free to family. Meanwhile, the family construction company continued its death spiral. They were hemorrhaging money. Projects that should have taken 4 weeks were taking 8. Clients were demanding refunds. Subcontractors were refusing to work for them anymore. Dad was scrambling to put out fires while Tyler blamed everyone but himself. About 4 months in, Dad called me directly. Not Mom as a messenger. Him. I need your help. Not for Tyler. For me. I built this company from nothing. I can't watch it die. You handed it to someone who's killing it. That was your choice. I made a mistake. I see that now. But please, help me save what I built. And there it was. The acknowledgement I'd been waiting for. Part of me wanted to say no. Let it burn. Watch them figure it out. But I'm not built like that. Despite everything, I didn't actually want to see Dad lose his life's work. I just wanted him to see what Tyler really was. I'll help. But I have conditions. Anything. First, I'm not doing this for free. You want me to save the business, you pay me consulting rates. $200 an hour, 20-hour minimum per week. Second, Tyler has no decision-making authority while I'm working. He can show up, he can learn, but he doesn't override anything I do. Third, once the business is stable, we're having a serious conversation about succession planning. Real planning. Not just handing it to whoever needs it most. Dad agreed to everything. Probably because he was desperate. Probably because he knew I was his only option. I came back, but not as the free family labor. As a paid consultant with a contract and everything in writing. I worked exactly 20 hours per week, billed every minute, and didn't do a single thing beyond what I was contracted to do. The first thing I did was assess the damage. It was worse than I thought. They were about $90,000 in the hole. Suppliers wouldn't extend credit anymore. 3 projects were so far behind they'd likely face breach of contract lawsuits. The accounts were a disaster. Tyler had been mixing personal and business expenses, paying himself whenever he felt like it, buying stuff for his apartment with company cards. I spent the first month just stabilizing the bleeding. Reached out to suppliers I still had relationships with, explained the situation honestly, and negotiated new terms. Not as good as before, but better than payment upfront. Collected on unpaid invoices. Set up a proper accounting system that even Dad could follow. But here's the thing. I only did exactly what I was contracted to do. I didn't go above and beyond. I didn't work nights and weekends. I didn't bring in new clients or chase big projects. I did my 20 hours per week, billed them properly, and went back to my own thriving consulting business. The business stabilized, but didn't grow. They were no longer hemorrhaging money, but they weren't making the kind of profit they used to either. And that was sustainable for keeping the lights on, but not for Dad's retirement plans. About 5 months into this arrangement, Mom called me again. Your father is exhausted. He's 64 years old and working 60-hour weeks trying to keep this business afloat. This needs to end. I agree. He should sell the business and retire. He built this company from nothing. It's his legacy. Then, he should have thought about that before handing it to someone who had no idea what they were doing. What do you want from me, Mom? I want you to come back, run the business properly, help your father retire with dignity? At what cost? Do I just forget that Tyler spent 3 years sleeping with my girlfriend? Do I pretend it's normal that you all knew, or at least suspected, and said nothing? That your first response was to tell me not to cause drama? We didn't know, she insisted. Rachel spent every Sunday at your house. Tyler was there every Sunday. You think they were just really good friends? You all saw what you wanted to see because it was easier than dealing with reality. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Where was fair when I spent 3 years helping Dad for free? Where was fair when Tyler got handed a business he wasn't qualified to run? Where was fair when you told me to let it go after I found out I'd been cheated on for 3 years? She didn't have an answer for that. Just silence on the other end of the line. Here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm going to finish out my contract, which has 4 months left. In that time, I'll get the business to a point where it can be sold. Dad can retire, you can downsize, and Tyler can figure out his own career path. After that, I'm done. No family dinners, no holidays, no pretending we're one big happy family. You're being cruel. No, I'm being honest. For the first time in my life, I'm putting myself first instead of sacrificing for a family that doesn't appreciate it. You should try it sometime. I hung up before she could respond. As for my family, last I heard from Jordan, who keeps tabs through mutual friends, things are not great. Dad and Mom sold their house and downsized to a condo. The retirement money is going faster than expected because they're helping Tyler with rent. Yes, helping Tyler with rent. Turns out when you lose your cushy job because the business gets sold and you have no actual skills or work history, finding employment is tough. Who knew? Rachel tried to reach out a few months ago. Long text about how she'd been working on herself, realized what she'd done wrong, wanted to apologize properly. I read it, felt absolutely nothing, and deleted it without responding. She sent another message a week later, asking if we could at least talk. I blocked her number. Tyler's text was even better. It came about a month ago. I hope you're happy now. You destroyed our family's business just to get revenge. I actually responded to that one. I didn't destroy anything. I salvaged what I could from your incompetence. Got Dad enough money to retire, and walked away. The fact that you see me refusing to sacrifice myself for you anymore, as revenge, says everything about who you are. Don't contact me again. He didn't. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. My parents cleared out my room and announced, "You will sleep in the garage and your brother-in-law will occupy your room tomorrow." Like they'd just handed down a royal decree. I was in my new penthouse when I saw 58 missed calls and 20 messages. Their power had been cut. Buckle up, Reddit. This is going to be a long one, but trust me, the ending is worth every word. Some of you might think I went too far. Others will say I didn't go far enough. Either way, this is the story of how I went from being my family's personal ATM to watching them beg for scraps while I sipped coffee in my penthouse. So, I'm 33 male now, but this story really starts when I was about 20. I grew up in a cramped 2-story house with my parents Roberto and Marisol, my older sister Valeria, and my younger brother Mateo. From the moment I could walk, I knew exactly where I stood in the family hierarchy. Dead last. Valeria was the undisputed princess. She could literally burn the house down, and somehow it would be my fault for not watching her closely enough. Everything she touched turned to gold in my parents' eyes. New clothes? Valeria needs them for her image. Money for going out? Well, Valeria works so hard at her part-time job at the nail salon, she deserves to have fun. I remember when I was 16, I'd been saving money from my grocery store job for months to buy a used motorcycle. I had almost enough when Valeria decided she absolutely needed a designer purse for graduation. Mom came to me with tears in her eyes, explaining how important this was for Valeria's self-esteem. Before I knew it, my motorcycle fund had become Valeria's purse fund. When I protested, Dad told me I was being selfish and that family comes first. Apparently, family only went one direction in our house. Then there was Mateo, the golden boy who never worked a day in his life, but somehow always had the latest sneakers and video games. He was too smart for manual labor, too creative for regular jobs, and finding himself through his early 20s. Spoiler alert, he's still looking. Mateo had this magical talent for disappearing whenever there was work to be done around the house. And me? I was the family workhorse. I fixed things when they broke, picked up extra shifts when bills got tight, and never complained when dinner was gone by the time I got home from work. I learned early that love in my family was conditional, and my condition was simple: shut up and pay up. When I turned 20, everything changed overnight. Dad got fired from his job at the shipping dock after one too many sick days that mysteriously coincided with major sporting events. Suddenly, the bills were stacking up like a house of cards in a windstorm, and everyone looked at me with those expectant eyes. I didn't have a choice. I dropped out of community college where I was studying business administration and picked up a job at the local steel manufacturing plant. The work was brutal: 12 to 14-hour shifts in blazing heat, lifting heavy machinery parts until my arms felt like they were going to fall off. I'd come home covered in sweat and grime, my hands torn up from handling rough steel. But here's what really gets me angry. Every single paycheck went straight into that house. Not just my fair share, but pretty much everything except what I needed for gas and fast food. The mortgage, utilities, groceries, and somehow always some emergency expense that usually involves something Valeria absolutely had to have. The worst part wasn't even the money. It was the complete lack of acknowledgement. Not once did anyone say thank you. I was just the machine that produced money. And as long as the money kept coming, nobody cared about the machine. 3 years into this nightmare, I was ready to lose my mind. I was 23 years old and felt like I was 50. My hands were permanently stained from steelwork. My back ached constantly, and I hadn't had a real conversation with anyone outside of work orders in months. That's when I started my secret project. I'd always been good with numbers and had a head for business from my brief time in college. So I started studying. Every night after work, when everyone else was watching TV or going out, I was in my room with library books learning about real estate investment and business management. I kept them hidden under my bed so nobody would ask questions. I started small, really small. I took the tiny bit of money I managed to save each month and began flipping items online. Old electronics that people threw away, furniture I could fix up, anything I could buy low and sell high. I'd spend lunch breaks at the steel plant browsing online marketplaces, looking for deals. Weekends were spent driving around to garage sales, searching for hidden gems. Most nights I got maybe 4 hours of sleep. The first year was rough. I made maybe an extra $100 a month, but when you're living paycheck to paycheck, it was everything. I kept every dollar secret, hiding it in a safety deposit box across town where nobody would recognize me. By 25, my little operation had grown into something bigger. I was buying damaged appliances from repair shops, fixing them up, and reselling them for serious profit. I learned everything from YouTube videos: how to repair washing machines, fix refrigerators, restore furniture. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was using the same hands my family took for granted to build something they had no idea existed. Then I made the jump that changed everything. I took every penny I'd saved over 2 years, about $8,000, and bought my first rental property. A tiny duplex in a rough part of town, but the numbers worked. Within 6 months, I bought another property, then another. I developed a system: buy distressed properties, fix them up myself, rent them out, then use the equity to buy more. By 27, I owned 12 rental units and was clearing over $6,000 a month in passive income. But I was still handing my parents the same $800 monthly rent and pretending I was barely getting by. The performance was exhausting but necessary. The hardest part was keeping the secret. I'd get calls from tenants during the day and have to pretend it was a telemarketer. I kept driving the same beat-up Honda Civic, even though I could afford to buy a luxury car with cash. Why the secrecy? Because I knew my family. The moment they found out I had real money, they'd find new ways to spend it. Valeria would need a car, then a better car, then a house. Mateo would have sudden inspiration for business ideas requiring startup capital. They'd drain me dry and still expect me to be grateful for the privilege. By age 30, I wasn't just successful, I was wealthy. My real estate portfolio had grown to 45 properties across 3 cities, including commercial buildings and strip malls. My monthly income was over $28,000 from rentals alone, plus another $15,000 from my property management company. I had employees, bank relationships, and a reputation as a serious player in real estate. The contrast between my 2 lives was staggering. During business hours, I was making deals worth hundreds of thousands, wearing expensive suits, and handling calls involving more money than my family saw in a year. But at home, I was still Lucas the steelworker who barely made ends meet. I'd actually quit the plant 2 years earlier, but told my family I was working different shifts. Instead, I spent my days managing my business empire from a rented office, changing clothes there to maintain the charade. Every month, I'd hand over that same $800 and listen to lectures about contributing more or getting a better job. Dad would mutter about my lack of ambition. The irony was almost funny. I was probably making more than everyone in our neighborhood combined, but getting treated like the family failure. I started documenting everything during this period. Every dollar I contributed, every expense I covered, every financial request. I photographed receipts, saved text messages asking for money, and kept detailed logs. I had a feeling I might need these records someday. The breaking point came when Valeria announced she was dating someone new. Carlos showed up one evening with that cocky swagger of someone who'd never worked for anything. Designer clothes, weak handshake, shifty eyes, and charm that screamed trouble. Within a week, Carlos was practically living at our house. He didn't work, claiming to be between opportunities and networking for his next big break. He had vague stories about business deals about to close, while being perfectly comfortable letting my paychecks subsidize his lifestyle. He'd order expensive takeout, monopolize the TV, and even complain about the cable package while I was paying the bill. The guy was living off my money and had the audacity to critique the service. I should have seen it coming, but somehow I was still shocked when it happened. I'd had a particularly long day dealing with a difficult tenant who was trying to break their lease, followed by a meeting with my lawyer about a potential new property acquisition. The tenant situation had been stressful. They were claiming the property had issues that weren't my responsibility, and I'd spent hours documenting the condition of the unit and reviewing the lease terms. The lawyer meeting had been more positive, discussing a strip mall purchase that could significantly expand my commercial portfolio. I was tired, stressed, and looking forward to just collapsing in my room and maybe watching something mindless on my laptop. I'd been thinking about finally telling my family the truth about my success. Maybe it was time to stop hiding and start helping them in a more substantial way. I'd even considered offering to pay off the house entirely as a surprise. I walked into the house around 9:30 p.m. on a Friday night, and immediately something felt off. The house was too quiet, but there were voices coming from upstairs, from my room. I climbed the stairs, and as I got closer, I could hear Carlos laughing about something. There was music playing, something loud and obnoxious that I definitely hadn't left on. I opened my bedroom door and felt like I'd walked into an alternate reality. My desk was gone. My bookshelf was gone. My bed was gone. In their place was Carlos's stuff, his clothes scattered around, his shoes kicked into the corner, his cologne creating a cloud that made my eyes water. There were empty bottles on what used to be my nightstand, and the walls had been redecorated with his posters of sports cars and provocative images. And there he was, lying on a completely different bed, a king-size bed that definitely hadn't been in my room that morning, scrolling through his phone like he owned the place. When he saw me, he didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. If anything, he looked amused. "Hey man," he said, barely glancing up from his phone. "This is my room now. Your sister and parents set it up. Pretty sweet setup, right? Way better than that twin bed you had. This is a real man's room." Before I could even process what was happening, my mother appeared in the doorway with that fake, cheerful voice she used when she was about to deliver bad news. "Oh, Lucas. Good. You're home. We moved your things to the garage to give Carlos some space while he gets back on his feet. It's temporary, of course, just until he finds his own place. Isn't that nice of us to help out Valeria's boyfriend?" The garage. She said it like she was offering me a promotion instead of literally making me homeless in my own house. The garage that smelled like motor oil and had no insulation, where the temperature was either freezing or sweltering depending on the season, where there was barely enough room to walk around my father's broken-down motorcycle and boxes of Christmas decorations from 1995. I looked around my former room, the room I'd been living in since I was a kid, the room where I'd spent countless nights studying business plans and researching real estate deals, the room I'd technically been paying for as part of my monthly contribution to the household. They'd even moved my dresser, my small TV, my books, everything. It was like I'd never existed in this space. "Where's my stuff?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm. "In the garage," Mom repeated, gesturing vaguely downstairs. "We set up a nice little area for you. It'll be like having your own apartment. Very independent and grown up. A nice little area. In the garage, for the guy who'd been single-handedly keeping the family financially afloat for the past decade." That's when Dad chimed in from downstairs. "If you don't like it, you can find somewhere else to live. Carlos is family now, and family takes care of family." The words hit me like a physical blow. After everything I'd done, everything I'd sacrificed, everything I'd given up to keep this family together, they were literally willing to throw me out for some guy who'd been around for 3 weeks. Carlos was family, but I wasn't. The guy paying all their bills wasn't family, but the guy sleeping with their daughter was? I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, just taking it all in. Carlos had gone back to his phone, occasionally chuckling at whatever he was watching. Mom was looking at me expectantly, probably waiting for me to thank her for the generous garage accommodation. Dad was still grumbling from downstairs about ungrateful kids and how I should be happy they were letting me stay at all. And that's when it hit me. I didn't have to take this anymore. For the first time in my adult life, I had options they didn't know about. I had money, assets, independence, everything I needed to walk away from this situation completely. I didn't say another word. I walked to the garage, which was indeed a pathetic joke of a living space. They'd pushed some boxes aside and put my mattress on the concrete floor. My desk was shoved against the wall, barely accessible behind Dad's old tools and a pile of paint cans. My clothes were in garbage bags like I was homeless. They'd even managed to break my bedside lamp during the move, but I didn't care about any of that anymore. I grabbed my laptop, my important documents, and enough clothes for a few days. Everything else could stay. They could keep my books, my furniture, my TV, everything. I was done. I walked past Carlos's room, my former room, and could hear him on the phone bragging to someone about his sweet new setup. I drove straight to the nicest hotel in the city and booked their best suite for a month. The penthouse suite cost more per night than I supposedly made in a week, but I paid with cash and didn't blink. While sitting in a room that probably cost more per night than my family spent on groceries in a week, I started making phone calls. First call, the electric company. I need to remove my name from the account at this address immediately. The customer service representative was helpful but confused. Sir, this will leave the account without a primary holder. Are you sure you want to do this? Absolutely certain. Remove my name and my payment authorization today. Second call, the water department. Same message, same confusion from their end. Third call, internet provider. Same thing. Sir, this will result in service termination. The other residents should contact us to establish new service. Perfect. That's exactly what I want. Fourth call, my bank, to stop the automatic mortgage payment that came out of my account every month. My banker was particularly concerned about this one. Lucas, you've been making these payments for years. Are you sure this is what you want to do? This could affect your credit if the mortgage goes into default. It's not my mortgage. My name isn't on the deed. I've just been making payments out of the goodness of my heart. That goodness has officially expired. By midnight, I'd severed every financial connection to that house. For the first time in over a decade, not a single penny of my money would go toward keeping my family comfortable. I felt lighter than I had in years. The next morning, I called my real estate agent, a woman who'd helped me buy several properties and had no idea I was supposedly a broke steelworker living with my parents. I told her I wanted to buy a condo, and I wanted it fast. What's your budget, Lucas? Whatever it takes to get the nicest place available. I want to pay cash and close within 2 weeks. Cash? Lucas, are you talking about a loan pre-approval or actual cash? Actual cash. I want to wire the money the day we agree on a property. And the silence on the other end was telling. Then, I'll start looking immediately. Within 2 weeks, I'd purchased a 3,200 square foot penthouse on the 32nd floor of the newest luxury building downtown. The place was incredible. Floor-to-ceiling windows with panoramic city views, hardwood floors that probably cost more than most people's cars, a kitchen with professional-grade appliances, and a master bathroom bigger than my old bedroom. The building had a concierge, a fitness center, a rooftop pool, and private elevators that required a key card to access the top floors. I paid cash. The whole thing. $680,000, just like that. The real estate agent, my lawyer, the building management, everyone was impressed by the speed and simplicity of the transaction. No financing, no contingencies. Just a straightforward purchase by someone who clearly had their finances in order. Moving in was surreal. I'd gone from a garage with a mattress on the floor to a penthouse with more space than I knew what to do with. Every morning, I'd drink coffee on my balcony, looking out over the city, thinking about my family waking up in their house that was about to become a very different place. It took exactly 9 days for reality to hit them. That's how long it took for the first utility shutoff notice to arrive. The electric company doesn't mess around. They give you a final notice and then it's lights out. My phone started ringing on day 10. Valeria's number flashed on my screen, but I let it go to voicemail. Then she called again, and again. By the end of the first day, I had 17 missed calls from her. The voicemails were something else. They started confused. Lucas, there's some mistake with the electric bill. Can you call them? They're saying the account is in your name, but you canceled it? That doesn't make sense. Then they got frustrated. Lucas, why aren't you answering? We need you to fix this. Carlos tried calling them, but they won't talk to him because he's not on the account. You need to call them back right now. By the end, they were getting desperate. Lucas, please call back. The power's going to get shut off, and Carlos has important business calls to make. This isn't funny anymore. But I didn't call back. Not that day, or the next, or the day after that. I was too busy enjoying my new life. I'd wake up in my king-size bed with Egyptian cotton sheets, work out in the building's gym, have breakfast on my balcony while reading the financial news, then spend my day managing my properties and investments. The power got shut off on day 14. That's when Dad called. His voicemail was typical Dad, gruff and demanding. Lucas, whatever games you're playing, cut it out. Get down here and fix this mess. Carlos is trying to run a business from here and you're sabotaging him. This is childish and you're embarrassing the family. Still didn't call back. I was too busy closing on another property, a small apartment complex that would add another $4,000 to my monthly income. The water got shut off 3 days later. Now Mom was calling, her voice shaky and confused. Mijo, please, we don't understand what's happening. Come home so we can figure this out together. Carlos says maybe someone stole your identity. We need to fix this as a family. Home. That was rich. The place where they'd literally kicked me out of my own room wasn't my home anymore. By the end of the month, they were facing foreclosure. The mortgage company doesn't care why you missed a payment. They just want their money. And when you've missed 2 payments in a row after years of on-time payments, they start the legal process fast. That's when the floodgates opened. My phone was getting dozens of calls and texts every day. Not just from my immediate family, but from extended relatives who'd heard about the emergency. Aunts and uncles I hadn't spoken to in years were suddenly very concerned about my well-being and asking if I knew what was happening to my poor parents. The text from Valeria got increasingly frantic. Where are you? Carlos left and everything is falling apart. Mom is crying every day. The bank is taking the house. Please come home. We're sorry about the room thing, okay? Just help us. That last one almost made me laugh. The room thing. Like they'd accidentally moved my toothbrush instead of literally making me homeless for a guy who'd bailed the second things got tough. While my family was dealing with their new reality, I was doing some research. It's amazing what you can find out about someone when you know where to look and have the money to pay for proper background checks. Carlos, it turned out, was quite the character. His real name was Carlos Martinez, and he had an impressive collection of outstanding debts, unpaid child support, and a history of moving in with vulnerable women before disappearing when things got complicated. He'd been evicted from his last 3 addresses and had multiple lawsuits pending against him for various financial schemes. The background check revealed a pattern going back 7 years. He'd find women who were financially stable but emotionally vulnerable, charm his way into their lives, then gradually take over their living situations. In most cases, he'd convince them to kick out roommates or family members to make room for his business operations. Once he'd established himself, he'd start running up debts in their names or using their addresses for various scams. My family had literally kicked out their main source of income to make room for a professional con artist. The irony was almost too perfect. I also learned that Carlos had been telling people around town that he was living rent-free with his rich girlfriend's family and bragging about how easy it was to manipulate desperate people. One of my business associates mentioned hearing some guy talking about how he'd convinced a family to give him free room and board while he figured out his next move. The next move, apparently, was skipping town the moment he realized the free ride was over. According to my sources, he'd left town the same day the power got shut off, taking with him several valuable items from the house, including Dad's watch collection and Mom's jewelry box. 2 months after I'd cut off their funding, my family was in complete freefall. They'd been evicted from the house that had been in our family for 15 years, the house that I'd been paying for without recognition or thanks for over a decade. The eviction process had been swift and brutal. Without my mortgage payments, they'd fallen behind immediately. They tried to cover the payments with their combined incomes, but Dad's part-time work, Mom's occasional cleaning jobs, Valeria's salon work, and Mateo's complete lack of employment weren't enough to cover even half of what I'd been contributing. They ended up in a 2-bedroom apartment in the worst part of town, the kind of place where you don't go out after dark and you always lock your car doors. The apartment was barely 800 square feet, with thin walls, broken fixtures, and a constant smell of cigarettes from the neighboring units. Dad had found work as a night security guard at a warehouse, making about 1/3 of what he used to make at the docks. The work was lonely and boring, and at his age, standing for 8 hours a night was taking a toll on his health. Mom was cleaning offices downtown, leaving the house at 4 a.m. and coming home exhausted and sore. The work was physically demanding, and she'd never done manual labor before. Her hands were getting rough, her back ached constantly, and she'd aged visibly in just a few months. Valeria had to get a real job for the first time in her life, working the register at a discount clothing store, dealing with difficult customers, and standing on her feet for 8-hour shifts. The weekly salon visits and expensive dinners were just memories now. She'd gone from being the pampered princess to just another retail worker struggling to make ends meet. The stress was showing. Her skin had broken out. She'd gained weight from eating cheap food, and her confidence had evaporated. Mateo was delivering food on a scooter, finally contributing something to the household income instead of just consuming it. He'd never held a real job before, and the reality of working for tips in all weather conditions was a harsh introduction to adult responsibility. His dreams of being too good for manual labor had crashed into the reality of needing to pay rent. I kept tabs on all of this through mutual acquaintances and social media. Valeria's Instagram went from carefully curated photos of restaurant meals and new outfits to silence. She hadn't posted anything in weeks. When she did post, it was generic motivational quotes about staying strong and better days ahead. The family that had once treated me like their personal ATM was now discovering what it felt like to actually work for their money. And honestly, I felt nothing. No guilt, no sadness, no urge to swoop in and save them. They'd made their choice when they picked Carlos over their own family member. Now they were living with the consequences. After 3 months of silence, I decided it was time for the final act. I called my mother's cell phone on a Tuesday evening. She answered on the first ring, like she'd been waiting by the phone. Lucas? Oh my God, Lucas, is that really you? Hi, Mom. I want to talk to everyone, in person. Can you get Dad, Valeria, and Mateo together this Saturday? Yes, of course. Are you coming home? We've missed you so much, mijo. Things have been so hard without you. I'll pick you all up at 2 p.m. Be ready. Pick us up? Lucas, where are you going to take us? Can we talk now? There's so much we need to explain. I hung up before she could ask any more questions. Saturday arrived gray and drizzly. Perfect weather for what I had planned. I drove my new car to their apartment complex. A matte black BMW M5 that had cost me more than Dad used to make in 2 years. The car was beautiful, powerful, and completely silent when it wanted to be. The kind of car that announced success without being flashy about it. I pulled up in front of their building and texted Valeria, I'm outside. They came out like they were sleepwalking. 4 people who used to carry themselves with the confidence of people who had someone else paying their bills, now looking like what they'd become. Working-class folks struggling to make ends meet. The transformation was stunning. Dad looked older, more tired, wearing a security guard uniform that hung loose on his shrinking frame. The night shift work had taken its toll, and he moved like someone whose body was breaking down. Mom had aged 5 years and 3 months. Her hair was grayer, her face lined with stress, and her clothes were the kind of practical, inexpensive things she'd never worn before. Valeria looked ordinary. No professional makeup, no designer clothes, just a regular person in regular clothes looking worn down by regular life. The confidence that had once made her the center of attention was gone, replaced by the tired resignation of someone who'd learned what real work felt like. Mateo was the only one who looked somewhat the same, but even he seemed smaller somehow, less sure of himself. The arrogance of someone who'd never had to work for anything had been replaced by the humility of someone who discovered that food delivery in winter weather was harder than he'd imagined. They climbed into my car without saying a word, probably afraid that talking might make me change my mind about whatever this was. The car was immaculate inside. Leather seats, high-end sound system, that new car smell mixed with subtle luxury cologne. I could see them looking around, trying to process how I could afford something like this. I drove them through downtown, past the fancy restaurants Valeria used to frequent, past the office buildings where I conducted business, through the financial district where real money lived and worked. Nobody spoke during the drive, but I could feel them stealing glances at me, trying to figure out what had changed. Finally, I pulled into the parking garage of my building. The valet recognized me immediately. Good afternoon, Mr. Johnson. Will you need the car later today? No, thanks. We'll be a while. I handed him the keys and led my family to the private elevator that served the top floors. I used my key card, pressed 32, and watched their faces as we rose higher than any of them had ever been in the city. The elevator opened directly into my foyer. Not a hallway, not a shared space. My own private entrance to my own private kingdom in the sky. They stepped out slowly, like they were entering a museum. The place was spotless, professionally decorated, and clearly expensive. The afternoon sun was streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting geometric patterns across the hardwood floors. Valeria was the first to speak. Whose place is this? Mine, I said simply. I led them through the living room, past the dining area that seated 8, past the kitchen with its granite countertops and professional-grade appliances, out onto the balcony where the entire city spread out below us like a map. They stood there staring, trying to process what they were seeing. The view was breathtaking. You could see for miles in every direction, watching tiny cars move through streets that looked like a model railroad set. Finally, Dad found his voice. I don't understand. How is this your place? You work at the steel plant. No, Dad. I quit the steel plant 3 years ago. I own 47 rental properties in 3 cities, plus a property management company. I've been making more money in a month than you thought I made in a year. The silence was deafening. Mom sank into one of my patio chairs, like her legs had given out. I don't understand, she whispered. So I explained everything. How I'd built my business from nothing while living in their house and paying their bills. How I'd kept it secret because I knew they'd find ways to spend everything I made. How I'd been planning my escape for years, waiting for the right moment. The right moment came when you threw me out of my own room for a con artist you'd known for 3 weeks, I continued. A con artist who, by the way, had outstanding debts to 12 different creditors and was wanted for child support in 2 states. But you didn't bother to check any of that, did you? Valeria was crying now, but I wasn't done. Do you want to know what the funny part is? I was actually planning to help you all eventually. I was going to pay off the house completely, set up trust funds, maybe buy you a new place with a pool. I was going to be the family hero, just like you always expected me to be. I walked back inside and they followed like a funeral procession. But then you showed me exactly what I meant to you. Not a son, not a brother, just a source of money that you could discard the moment someone more interesting came along. I had them sit in my living room while I went to my office and retrieved 4 manila envelopes I'd prepared for this moment. Each envelope was labeled with a name and contained printouts I'd been saving for months. Valeria, I said, handing her the first envelope. These are screenshots of Carlos's social media posts about how easy it was to manipulate your family, including the photos he posted of himself in my room, captioned, "Living rent-free with these suckers." Her face went white as she scrolled through the printouts. There were dozens of them. Photos of Carlos lounging in my former room, posts about stupid families who were easy to con, even pictures of him wearing Dad's watches and Mom's jewelry before he stole them. Mom, I continued, handing her the second envelope. This is a complete financial breakdown of every dollar I contributed to this family over the past 13 years. The total comes to $247,000. That's not counting the interest I could have earned investing that money instead. Mom's hands were shaking as she looked at the numbers. Page after page of documented payments, receipts, bank transfers, and loan forgiveness. It was undeniable proof of just how much I'd been carrying the family financially. Dad, this is for you. The third envelope contained copies of every utility shutoff notice, every late payment fee, every foreclosure warning, all the consequences of treating your main income source like garbage. And Mateo, I said, handing him the last envelope. This is a list of every time you borrowed money from me and never paid it back. Every time you asked me to cover your expenses. Every time you took something of mine without asking. It's quite a list. They sat there in my beautiful living room, surrounded by more luxury than they'd ever experienced, holding the evidence of their own poor judgment. I want you to understand something, I said, standing by the windows with the city skyline behind me. I didn't do this to hurt you. I did this to teach you something you apparently never learned, that actions have consequences. Valeria looked up from her envelope, mascara running down her cheeks. Lucas, please, we're family. We made a mistake, but we're still family. Family, I repeated. You know what family does? Family doesn't throw you in a garage for a stranger. Family doesn't take your contributions for granted for over a decade. Family doesn't choose a con artist over their own blood. I walked to the front door and opened it. But here's what I'm going to do, because unlike you, I actually understand what family means. I'm not going to leave you homeless or starving. I've set up a trust fund that will pay each of you $500 a month for the next 5 years. It's enough to keep you from being completely destitute, but not enough to go back to your old lifestyle. Mom started to say something, but I held up my hand. The money comes with conditions. You have to stay employed, all of you. You have to live within your means. And you have to acknowledge in writing that this is charity, not obligation. I don't owe you anything anymore. They started to get up, probably thinking this was negotiation time, but I shook my head. That's the offer. Take it or leave it. You have 1 week to decide. As they filed past me toward the elevator, each of them tried to say something. Apologies, explanations, promises to change. I listened politely and said nothing. The elevator doors closed, and I was alone again in my perfect apartment, watching the sunset over the city I'd conquered while they'd been busy taking me for granted. At 16, my parents framed me for my brother's robbery and dumped me at a farm with a trash bag, saying, "We're not ruining his life to save yours." 13 years later, they walked into my law office begging me to keep him out of prison. Sup Reddit, so I, 29 male, and I need to tell you about the night my parents chose a varsity jacket over their own blood. It started with my phone lighting up at 11:52 p.m. on a Wednesday in February. Blaze, my 14-year-old brother, the kid who could torch an orphanage and mom would blame the matches. I was 16, pulling overtime at Davidson's warehouse, stacking pallets in the freezer section because the forklift was down. "Malcolm, get here now. I'm screwed." Not his usual whining. Real panic. The kind that makes your stomach drop. He was at Riverside High with his crew, 2 friends from his team. They jimmied open the maintenance entrance, found the safe with athletics department money, cracked it with a pry bar, and grabbed cash from gate receipts. Then, one of them tagged the walls while the other smashed the equipment room for fun. Motion sensors had already pinged campus security. I should have told him to eat it. Instead, I ran. That's what 14 years of conditioning does. You're the older brother. You fix problems. You take the heat. Dad drilled it into me every time Blaze screwed up, which was weekly. 6 blocks in February cold, lungs burning, fingers going numb through my work gloves. All to save a brother who'd throw me to sharks for $1. I hit Marshall Avenue right as 2 cop cars rolled up, lights flashing. 3 officers climbing out, hands hovering near belts. Blaze standing by the side door with his 2 friends, looking like prep school angels. The second he saw me running toward them in my warehouse jacket with the company logo, sweating, breathing hard, looking exactly like someone fleeing a crime scene, his whole posture changed. Blaze shoved the pry bar into my hands without hesitation. "Officers, my brother made us do it. He said he'd beat me if I didn't help." I stood there like an idiot, pry bar in hand, chest heaving, while 3 cops took in the scene. Winded teenager in work clothes holding the tool versus 3 clean kids in athletic gear. "Drop it, hands up, now." "Officer, I just got here." I said hands up. Cuffs bit into my wrists. Too tight. They patted me down, found my phone and warehouse keys, walked me to the cruiser. The back seat smelled like sweat, and whatever they used to clean up after incidents. Through the window, I watched a 3rd car pull up. My parents. My dad stepped out of his Lexus wearing a sport coat at midnight. My mom in her designer coat, and that look she saved for the help. They walked past my cruiser without a glance. Wrapped Blaze in mom's coat like he'd survived Normandy. Dad was already working, shaking hands with the lead cop, leaning in close. My father collected favors like baseball cards. The deputy mayor, the district attorney, the watch commander he played racquetball with every Thursday. The officer opened my door and hauled me out. I tried one last time. "Dad, check Blaze's phone, check his call log. He's got the cash in his pocket right now." Mom's face went cold. Not angry. Calculated. She stepped between us, designer nails pointing at my chest. "Blaze is a good kid, officer. Honor student, varsity track, has college scouts watching. Malcolm has always been jealous of his brother's success. We've tried counseling, consequences, structure. Nothing works. He threatened Blaze tonight, forced him into this." "That's not true." "Don't you dare," she hissed. "You've been stealing from us for months. 40 here, 60 there. We should have seen this coming." I'd never stolen anything, but I recognized the play. She was building her story. Another officer walked over with an evidence bag. "Found this on your brother, ma'am." Inside, $800 in mixed bills. For 1 second, I thought the truth would win. Then Dad spoke up, lawyer voice on full. "Malcolm gave that to Blaze to hold. Told him there'd be consequences if he talked. My older son is bigger, stronger. Look at the size difference, officer." Blaze was terrified. He paused, building his case. He's been obsessed with that safe for weeks. Kept talking about it at dinner. I stared at him. He was inventing details he thought sounded right. Manufacturing evidence in real time. I was 5 feet 11 inches and maybe 165 pounds. Blaze was 5 feet 9 inches and built like a linebacker. But facts don't matter when you're in warehouse gear versus Adidas. The cops huddled up. I caught fragments. First offense for both. Minors, parents cooperative, younger one seems traumatized. 20 minutes later, they had their deal worked out. Dad had mentioned his racquetball games with the watch commander, his donations to the police athletic league, Blaze's bright future and scholarship potential. The play. Blaze goes home with a warning and counseling. I get processed downtown. "You're making a mistake," I told the officer. "Kid, I've been doing this 19 years. This story writes itself. 4 hours in holding, metal bench, fluorescent lights buzzing, industrial cleaner trying to hide the smell, but not really managing it. Someone singing Springsteen off-key in the next cell at 3:52 a.m. Harrington, your parents are here. I thought they were taking me home. Wrong. Dad drove in silence. Mom stared out the window like I wasn't there. Blaze wasn't in the car, already home in his room with his trophies and his future intact. We pulled into our driveway at 4:31 a.m. Dad didn't hit the garage. Parked in the driveway, engine running, popped the trunk. Get out! He pulled a black contractor bag from the trunk, threw it on the concrete. Pack, 10 minutes. What are you talking about? You heard me. You destroyed this family's name. Police have you on file. If this goes to trial, Blaze gets dragged in. He's got scouts coming in March. D3 programs looking at him. You think they recruit kids with records? He looked at me like I was a broken appliance. You're a liability, Malcolm. Blaze is an asset. That's just math. I didn't do anything. What you did, Mom cut in, voice cold, was force us to choose. We chose the son with a future over the son who's always been a problem. Her voice cracked slightly. You think this is easy for us? We're trying to protect this family. If Blaze's name gets dragged through the mud, it destroys everything we've built. You're 16. You'll recover. Blaze has got scouts, opportunities. We have to think about what's best for everyone. She actually believed it. I could see it in her face. She'd rewritten the story so thoroughly that she was the victim here, doing the hard thing, making the sacrifice. A problem? I work 40 hours a week. I make honor roll. Made, she corrected. Until tonight. You're going to Uncle Ward and Aunt Nadine in Pennsylvania. We called them. They agreed to take you in. That's 4 hours away. What about school? My job? You lost your job when you abandoned your shift? We contacted the principal. He understood when we explained your behavioral issues. Behavioral issues. Like I was defective. Get your things. 9 minutes left. I walked into the house I'd lived in 16 years. Past Blaze's room. Door closed. Probably sleeping like a baby. Not a care in the world. My room looked the same. Bed I didn't make this morning. Backpack with my unfinished physics homework. Posters on the wall. Computer humming. I grabbed the bag and started throwing stuff in. Clothes, shoes, textbooks I'd paid for myself, the 400 in savings bonds from my grandmother before she died, a photo of me and my dog Max before they put him down without telling me. Came home from school one day. He was just gone. 8 minutes to pack 16 years into a trash bag. When I came down, Mom was holding my phone. The one I'd bought myself. I'll need that. What? No, I paid. Phones are for family. She dropped it in her purse. Ward and Nadine don't have good service anyway. That's when it clicked. This wasn't punishment. This was deletion. They were erasing me. The drive to Pennsylvania was 4 hours of silence. I sat in back with the trash bag, watching streetlights turn into highway darkness. Then absolute nothing. No phone, no music, just the Lexus engine and my mother's occasional sighs. Around 7 a.m., the sun came up. We passed through farm country. Gray fields, bare trees, cold mist over everything. Looked dead out there. Finally, we turned onto a gravel road. Mailbox that said Miller in faded paint. Long driveway to a white farmhouse. Paint peeling. Big barn. The smell hit me through the vents. Wet earth, animals, manure. Uncle Ward and Aunt Nadine were on the porch. I'd met them twice. Grandma's funeral when I was 11. And one family reunion that ended in a screaming match. Dad and Ward hadn't spoken since. Dad didn't turn off the engine. Got out, opened the trunk, dumped my bag in the gravel. Appreciate you taking him. We could have pressed charges. Maybe farm work will straighten him out. Uncle Ward, tall, weathered, wearing Carhartt and work boots, looked from the bag to me to his brother. Then he spat tobacco juice that landed an inch from Dad's shoes. We didn't take him to do you a favor, Alaric. We took him because we're not letting you throw a kid to the wolves? Dad's face went red. How dare? How dare I? You show up at dawn, dump your son like trash, and want me to what? Shake your hand? Mom stayed in the car. Window up, playing statue. Dad shoved an envelope at Aunt Nadine. Transfer papers, emergency contacts. He's your problem. Don't call asking for money. Aunt Nadine took it without a word. Face red, eyes wet. Dad backed out, spun gravel, took off. The Lexus disappeared, leaving dust that settled on my clothes. Got in my mouth, tasted awful. I stood there, 16, black bag at my feet, in front of virtual strangers on a farm in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, waiting for the lecture, the rules, to be told I was a burden. Instead, Aunt Nadine walked down and pulled me into a hug. She smelled like coffee and fresh laundry and warmth. "I'm so sorry, Malcolm," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." That's when I lost it. Not silent tears, full-on ugly crying. Aunt Nadine just held tighter. "Come on," Uncle Ward said quietly, picking up my bag like it weighed nothing. "Let's get you inside. You look frozen." The farmhouse was warm. Wood stove cranking heat, smell of bacon and coffee. Furniture old but solid. None of Mom's designer obsession. Aunt Nadine made breakfast. Scrambled eggs, bacon, hash browns, toast with homemade jam. I ate like I'd been starving. "Your room's upstairs," Ward said, pouring coffee. "Used to be the spare room, but it's yours now. Small, but it's got a decent view. Nadine put fresh sheets on last night. We'll get you enrolled at Twin Valley on Monday," Nadine added. 20-minute bus ride. Picks up at 6:45. "What about work? I need to save." "We'll figure it out," Ward said. "Right now, you need to rest. You've been through hell." I looked at them. Really looked. They weren't rich. The farm was struggling. Outdated appliances, worn furniture, Nadine scraping every bit of jam from the jar. But they'd taken me in without hesitation. "Why?" I asked. "Why are you doing this?" Ward set down his mug. "Because you're family, Malcolm. Real family. Not the country club variety. The kind that shows up when it counts." That night, I lay in my new room looking out at fields going dark in the distance. I pulled out the only thing I'd hidden from Mom, my grandfather's pocket watch. Grandma gave it to me at her funeral. Inside was a tiny photo. Her maiden name engraved, Dorothea Miller. I made a promise. On my 18th birthday, I'd kill Malcolm Harrington. I'd become Malcolm Miller, and I'd make sure Harrington meant nothing but shame. But first, I had to survive. The first night on the farm, I couldn't sleep. Kept waiting for the door to open. For Dad to say this was all a lesson, that I'd learned my place. Around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps. Nadine checking on me. She didn't say anything, just left a plate of cookies on the dresser and closed the door soft. I cried into the pillow so she wouldn't hear. Farm life was brutal. 4:30 a.m. chores, school, homework, more chores. Hands always bleeding from something. I passed out at my desk twice in the first month. Nadine found me face down in my algebra textbook at 2 a.m., told me I was going to kill myself. I said good, then they win. She slapped me just hard enough to snap me out of it. "Don't give them that. Don't give them anything." I didn't. 2 months in, legal papers arrived. Permanent transfer of guardianship, release of liability. They'd legally disowned me. Protected their assets in case I ever sued. I signed them in the kitchen while Ward watched. "You don't have to," he said. "Yeah, I do." I pushed the papers across the table. "They want me gone. I'll be gone." That night, I started a notebook. Page 1. Everything I knew about the break-in. Blaze call time. The cops' arrival time. What Dad said about the safe location. Wrong details, I wrote, he guessed. Evidence he manufactured. Page 2. Guardianship laws. Page 3. Name change requirements. The day I turned 18, I walked into the Philadelphia County Courthouse and filed for a name change. Sat for 2 hours with people escaping bad marriages, witness protection, fresh starts. When the official called my name, I stood up. Malcolm Harrington petitioning for name change to Malcolm Miller, Your Honor. Reason? The name Harrington represents people who abandoned their responsibilities. Miller represents the family who took those responsibilities seriously. He looked at me for a long moment. Granted. Next case. I walked out as Malcolm Miller. Sent a certified copy to my parents' address. It came back 2 weeks later. Returned to sender. Unopened. I graduated high school valedictorian. My parents didn't show. Got a full ride to Penn State. Worked 2 jobs, restaurant nights, legal aid clinic days. Slept 4 hours. Ate ramen and whatever the restaurant let me take home. Saved every dollar. My roommate asked why I never went out. Because I'm building something, I told him. Building what? A way out. Law school. Then straight into the DA's office. Economic Crimes Unit. Not because I wanted to save the world. Because I wanted to learn how they'd buried me. How cases get built when someone's already decided you're guilty. I learned timelines, bank records, phone dumps, subpoenas. How to trap people with their own patterns. Timeline doesn't lie. People do. When my supervisor told me to make it fit on a case that felt wrong, I quit. Went into criminal defense. By 27, I'd joined a small firm called Bradford and Associates. It wasn't big law, but it had a solid reputation in white-collar defense. I billed like a psycho. 70 to 80-hour weeks, no vacations, always available. Not because I was brilliant, because I was relentless. When I brought in two major corporate retainers and built a referral pipeline, they made me junior partner. Changed the firm name to Miller and Bradford. First time my chosen name meant something in the legal world. First thing I did with partner money. Hired a financial analyst to pull public records on the Harrington family. Guy worked financial crimes background, specialized in forensic accounting. Cost more than my rent, but I needed a paper trail. No tailing, no photos through windows, no nonsense, just court dockets, liens, LLC filings, and credit traces. Not paranoia. Strategy. Monthly reports were basically a memo of public filings and case updates. He sent them like clockwork. 2 years later, at 29, I bought out the retiring founding partner and became senior partner. Youngest in firm history. Office with a door that locked. I sent Ward and Nadine checks big enough to fix the farm. I built the life my parents said I'd never have, and I waited. The reports came monthly. They painted a picture of Blaze's life unraveling through public records, court filings, business registrations, property transfers. Without me as the scapegoat, the family dynamic had shifted. Blaze became the sole focus, and he was bleeding them dry. The analyst had pieced together the whole ugly history from records going back years. Blaze had flunked out of Penn State freshman year. Dad pulled strings to get him into Westchester. Blaze lasted a semester before academic probation turned into dismissal. He managed to scrape into a third school, some no-name place that would take anyone with a pulse and a check, where he got a girl pregnant before washing out entirely. My parents pressured him to marry her. Big wedding at the country club they couldn't afford. 8 months later, divorce. Brutal custody battle where my parents burned through tens of thousands on lawyers fighting for visitation rights to a grandkid they eventually ignored. Never held a job longer than 13 months. Fired for falsifying inspection reports at a car dealership, dealing steroids at a gym, forging claim documents at an insurance company. Each time Dad would make calls, pull favors, get Blaze another shot. The golden child was tarnishing fast. Then came the really good part. Dad burned every favor to get Blaze hired at Meridian Properties, a mid-sized commercial real estate firm. Acquisitions coordinator. Blaze found a way to screw it up. The report that hit my desk on a Tuesday in October was perfect. Subject: Blaze Harrington, federal investigation. Over 23 months, Blaze had been running a systematic kickback scheme, created a shell company called Keystone Consulting Services, submitted inflated appraisals to Meridian, approved his own fraudulent contracts, funneled $189,000 into an account he controlled, used the money to fund a sports betting addiction. DraftKings, FanDuel, offshore sites, local bookies, lost most of it. Spent the rest on a business venture that was really just him leasing office space he never used and buying a BMW. Meridian's CFO caught it during a routine audit, found the pattern, called the feds. Federal prosecutors were building a wire fraud and embezzlement case. Blaze was looking at 8 to 12 years federal time. And here's the beautiful part. My parents were broke. The financial analysis showed everything. They'd refinanced the house twice, once for Blaze's divorce lawyers, once for his business investment. They'd drained their retirement accounts, maxed out 5 credit cards, living on Social Security and fumes. I sat in my office chair, looking at the case summary compiled from federal court dockets. Blaze at 27, case number listed, charges pending. I closed the file, set it in my desk drawer with the others. I had 3 depositions to prep, a motion to file by 5, and a client dinner at 7. The Harrington family drama was just background noise now. I'd moved on, built something they said I never would. I turned back to my computer and pulled up the Henderson case files. 2 days later, my assistant walked into my office holding an intake sheet. Her face looked odd, careful. "Malcolm, we just got a call. Potential clients for Friday, federal white-collar case. Embezzlement, wire fraud, they're desperate. Someone at their country club recommended us. Said we're the shark they need." I didn't look up from my screen. "Run the credit check. If they can't pay the retainer, pass them to someone else." "Already did." She paused. "They're underwater. Can't afford our rates." "But Malcolm, the name." Something in her voice made me look up. She slid the intake sheet across my desk. Alaric and Linnea Harrington. The room went quiet. I could hear the ventilation system. Traffic 15 floors below. My own heartbeat. I stared at the names. The handwriting. The phone number with the same area code I grew up with. My hand started to shake. I pressed it flat against the desk. She stood there, waiting. She knew enough of my history. Knew the name Harrington meant something. "Malcolm, I can refer them out. You don't have to book them." My voice came out steady. Cold. What? Friday, 2 p.m. Conference Room B. Malcolm, that's a conflict of interest. Emotional compromise. Let me pass this to Conference Room B, I repeated, the one with the glass walls. She looked at me for a long moment. Understanding dawned on her face. You want them to see everything. I want them to feel how far they have to climb just to beg. She hesitated, then picked up the intake sheet. Their credit check came back. They're drowning. We normally require a $40,000 retainer for federal cases. They can't. I know. Book them anyway. I'll be in the room. Wouldn't have it any other way. She left. I sat there staring at where the intake sheet had been. Friday at 2 p.m. Conference Room B. 13 years. And they were finally coming to me. Friday at 1:58 p.m., I stood at my window in my charcoal suit, burgundy tie. I'd cleared my afternoon, turned off my phone. I wanted complete control when they walked in. At 2 p.m. exactly, I walked to Conference Room B. Through the glass walls, I could see them before they saw me. They looked small. Dad had lost most of his hair, wearing a suit that looked expensive from distance but was frayed at the cuffs, a stain on the collar poorly hidden, skin gray and waxy, hands shaking as he gripped his briefcase. Mom had aged hard. Too much makeup trying to cover stress lines. Clutching a knockoff purse. I could tell from the hardware. Her pearls looked real, but I'd bet they were fake. The real ones probably sold months ago. They were terrified. I could tell. I paused at the door, heart pounding. You are Malcolm Miller, I told myself. You are the shark. I opened the door and walked in. They both stood immediately, putting on their respectable people masks. Mr. Miller, Dad said, extending a hand. Smile too wide. Thank you for seeing us. I'm Alaric Harrington. This is my wife, Linnea. We're in a terrible situation, and we heard you're the best. Actually, I believe we may have a mutual connection. Do you know? I walked past his outstretched hand to the head of the table. Didn't sit. Set my leather portfolio down with a sharp snap. Let the silence stretch. Dad's hand hung in the air for 3 seconds before he dropped it. Sit. My voice was deeper than at 16, cold, final. They hesitated, then sat. Mom tried next. Softer approach. Mr. Miller, we're just worried parents. Blaze is our baby. I'm sure you understand. If you have children of your own someday, you'll know what it's like to... I remained standing. Opened the file. Started reading. Let her voice trail off into nothing. They didn't recognize me. Why would they? Last time they saw me, I was a scrawny kid in warehouse clothes. Now, I was a 190-pound man with a beard. Different haircut, different name. And besides, in their minds, Malcolm Harrington was probably dead in a gutter somewhere. He certainly wasn't this. Before you say anything specific, I need names and whether you've been charged. If this is who I think it is, I can't touch it. We're in a terrible situation, Mr. Miller. Mom started again, voice shaking. Our son Blaze, he's a good boy. He's been targeted by his employers. They fabricated these terrible accusations about embezzlement. 189,000, I said, not looking up from the file. Wire fraud. 23 separate transactions over 23 months. That's not a misunderstanding, Linnea Harrington. That's systematic theft. I used her full name like she was a stranger. Because she was. Silence. It's a setup. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Blaze handles millions in transactions. Why would he steal that amount? It doesn't make sense. Maybe because he's got a serious sports betting problem spread across DraftKings, FanDuel, and a couple bookies in Atlantic City. Tens of thousands at loan shark rates. They went white. How do you know that? Dad whispered. That's not in the police report. I do my research, Mr. Harrington. I don't take cases I can't win. And I don't take losers. Your son looks like a loser. I paused. I could tell what the government was building just by what they weren't asking yet. How dare you? Mom gasped, standing. We came here for help, not insults. We have money. We can pay whatever. Do you? I looked up at her. Because my background check shows your house is underwater. You've maxed out 5 credit cards. Your retirement accounts are empty. You're living on Social Security and lies. Dad's face went red. Now wait just a minute. We are the Harrington family. We have standing in this community. Connections. Who do you think you're talking to, like... I closed the file. The sound echoed. I stood up, walked slowly around the table, let them sweat. You really don't know who I am, do you? The room got tense. Sweat beaded on Dad's forehead. I beg your pardon? Mom clutched her fake pearls. Have we met at the club? I let out a short, dry laugh. No humor in it. The club? No, Linnea. Let me tell you a story. I started pacing. About a 16-year-old kid, honor student, Worked 40 hours a week, saved every penny. One night, his younger brother robbed a school. The older brother ran to help because he'd been programmed that family protects family. And what did his parents do? I stopped behind Dad's chair. Could see his scalp through his thinning hair. They blamed the older brother. Told the cops he was the criminal. Put him in a car at 4 a.m. with a garbage bag and dumped him at a farm like he was trash. Took his phone. Took his home. Signed away their rights like he was defective merchandise. Dad slowly turned his chair around. His mouth opened and closed. Malcolm? It came out as a squeak. Mom made a sound, half gasp, half whimper, covered her mouth with both hands, stared at me, really seeing me for the first time, finally recognizing the eyes of the kid she'd betrayed. My hand twitched. I clenched it into a fist, felt my nails dig into my palm, swallowed hard. Then I let the professional mask slide back into place. Hello, Mom. Hello, Dad. Or should I say, Mr. and Mrs. Harrington? I leaned back, crossed my arms. Conflict of interest. I'm not your lawyer. This meeting is over. I pulled out a firm letterhead, wrote 3 lines, signed it, slid it across the table. That's your written notice of non-representation. No conflict waiver is possible here. Whatever you say next, you're saying to a stranger. They didn't leave. Of course they didn't. Oh my God, Mom sobbed. Malcolm, it's really you. You're successful. You made something of yourself. Senior partner, I corrected. Youngest in the firm's history. The man you came begging to save your golden child. Dad stood up, legs shaky. Tried to smile. Looked more like a grimace. Son, Jesus, look at you. We had no idea. We always knew you had potential. That's why we sent you to wards. To build character. Look at you now. Success. Wealth. He gestured around. We did this for you. It was tough love. I stared at him. The absolute nerve. Rewriting history in real time to make himself the hero. Tough love, I repeated quietly. You abandoned me. Didn't call for 13 years. Didn't care if I lived or died until you needed something. We were giving you space. Space. I walked to the window. No, you were protecting your investment. Blaze was the one you poured money into. Blaze was the one worth saving. Malcolm, please, Mom cried, standing. We're family. Blood is blood. You have to help Blaze. He's your brother. He's in serious trouble. You're the best. We heard you're the best. You can fix this. Fix it, I repeated. Just like you fixed the school break-in. Just like you fixed his DUI, and his failed drug test, and his domestic assault charge. You've spent 13 years clearing his path, removing every consequence. That's why he's a criminal. You didn't raise a son. You raised a parasite. Don't talk about your brother that way, Dad shouted, old anger flashing. He made a mistake. He needs us. He needs you. He needs consequences. I turned around, voice dropping. He stole $189,000, destroyed people's careers, people who trusted him. And you want me to use my skill, my reputation, the career I built from nothing to save him? Again? You have to, Mom said, voice dropping to a hiss. Because if you don't, we'll tell everyone. We'll tell your partners, your clients, the business community. We'll tell them you abandoned your family, that you let your own brother go to prison when you could have saved him. How will that look, Mr. Miller? There it was. Blackmail. Classic Harrington move. I smiled. It was cold. Mean. You walked in here thinking you needed a defense attorney. You forgot I used to be the other side. Go ahead. Tell them. Because here's what I'm going to do. I'm refusing this case. Conflict of interest. But more importantly, I'm going to hand over every piece of evidence I have about Blaze's past crimes to the prosecution, the ones you covered up. I walked back to the table, leaned on it with both hands. And I'm going to tell them about something my analyst found. Something beautiful. See, Blaze didn't just gamble that money away. He transferred portions into a shell account. Alaric and Linnea. You weren't just protecting him. You were living off his stolen money. You knew he was stealing, and you spent the proceeds. Their faces went from red to white in seconds. That's not, Dad stammered. Your mortgage payments for the last 14 months came from that account. Your car lease, that account. Those country club dues you couldn't afford to drop, that account. You're not just enablers, you're accomplices. We didn't know where it came from, Mom whispered. I pulled out a flash drive. This has the corporate filings, property records, and a timeline built from public documents. It's not privileged because I'm not your attorney. If the subpoenas match this, the prosecution has the parents too. I leaned forward. I've watched people get buried by timelines. A timeline doesn't care how charming you are. Because right now they're looking at Blaze for 8 years. But with your involvement, you're both looking at conspiracy charges, receiving stolen property, money laundering. That's federal prison, Linnea, not country club probation. Dad lunged forward. You wouldn't. We're your parents. You terminated that relationship in writing. I'm respecting your paperwork. I pressed the intercom. Security to conference room B. Malcolm, please, Mom shrieked. We made mistakes, but we're trying to make it right. You made choices. You chose Blaze over me 13 years ago. Now I'm choosing me. 2 security guards appeared. My assistant was behind them. These people are leaving. Now. Wait! Dad grabbed the table. Malcolm, please, we're sorry. We're truly sorry. We were wrong. Please don't do this. I looked at him. Apologies usually show up before the bill. They were escorted out. I watched through the glass as they stumbled to the elevators. Mom crying, Dad holding her up. My assistant closed the door, stood beside me. You okay? I'm better than okay. I'm free. But I wasn't done. I had one more move to make. I didn't leak to the press, went straight to the U.S. Attorney's office, requested a meeting with the assistant U.S. attorney handling Blaze's case, sat down in her office Monday morning, laid out a manila folder. You're looking at Blaze Harrington for embezzlement, I said, but you're missing the bigger picture. She opened the folder. Corporate filings, property records, UCC liens, a timeline built from public documents. His parents were in on it? Don't know. But my analyst pulled these from public records. Business registrations, property transfers, court filings. There's a pattern. If your subpoenas line up with this timeline, you've got more than one defendant. Everything's public source, non-privileged. I refused their representation in writing. She looked up at me. Why are you handing this over? You're a defense attorney. Conflict of interest. This is just a concerned citizen providing leads on a federal case. I walked out. Let the system do what systems do best when you feed them the right information through the right people. 6 weeks later, after subpoenas matched the timeline, warrants confirmed the transfers, and a grand jury that didn't care about their country club membership handed down indictments. The knock finally came at 6 a.m. It wasn't just Blaze who got arrested. It was all 3 of them. FBI seized computers, financial records, the leased Lexus. Their neighbors watched from windows as the Harrington family was led away in cuffs. Public opinion flipped instantly. The Golden family was fraud. By spring, Blaze pleaded guilty. Got 7 years federal time? But the beautiful part? He turned on my parents to shave off time. Testified they pressured him to steal to maintain their lifestyle. Painted them as the masterminds. The Golden child cannibalized his creators to save himself. 3 days before his sentencing hearing, Blaze showed up outside my firm. He was waiting on the sidewalk when I left for lunch, wearing a cheap suit and an ankle monitor. Bloated face, red eyes. The varsity athlete was gone. Malcolm! Voice cracked. I kept walking. He followed. Please, I was 14 and stupid. Dad told me what to say. I didn't understand. I stopped. Turned around. You understood enough to hand me the pry bar? I'm sorry. 7 years, Malcolm. I can't do that, please. The begging sounded hollow. Practiced. Same manipulation. Different decade. Blood is blood, he tried. You can't abandon family. You're not family, I said. You're just a guy I used to know who made his choices. His face crumbled, dropped to his knees right there on the sidewalk. I looked down at him, the Golden child finally facing consequences, with nobody left to bail him out. I felt nothing. Call your lawyer. I stepped around him and kept walking. For the first time in 13 years, I wasn't responsible for him. My parents were charged with conspiracy and receiving stolen property. Because of their age and lack of prior record, they avoided prison time. But by the end of the year, they'd lost everything. House foreclosed to pay restitution. Accounts frozen. Credit destroyed. Their reputation, the only thing they'd truly valued, incinerated. Their name became synonymous with fraud. 2 months later, I sat in my office reading the final report. Alaric and Linnea Harrington were living in a subsidized apartment in Camden, surviving on basic Social Security. Dad was working night security at a warehouse. Mom was trying to sell makeup on Facebook. Their fall was complete. My assistant brought me coffee. It's over. It's over, I agreed. Do you feel bad? I thought about the kid with the garbage bag. Thought about Aunt Nadine's hug. Thought about Uncle Ward teaching me to rebuild an engine, telling me I had good hands. No, I feel vindicated. I pulled out my checkbook, wrote a check for $40,000. Send this to Ward and Nadine. Tell them to buy that property they wanted. Tell them the harvest came in early. But the universe had one more gift for me. 6 months later, I was walking to my car in the firm's garage when I saw a figure step into the light. My mother. She looked broken. The woman who'd terrorized service workers was gone. Old woman in a wet coat 3 sizes too big. Gray hair and a messy bun. No makeup. Dollar store purse. Malcolm. Voice thin, hoarse. Linnea. Couldn't call her mom. Word didn't fit anymore. She flinched. I've been waiting. 3 hours. I need to talk to you. What do you want? Your father. He's sick. Heart problems, diabetes. Medicine costs a fortune. Medicare doesn't cover everything. The rent. They raised it. We're drowning, Malcolm, please. Just a few thousand to get through spring. You have so much. I looked at her. Waited for anger. Rage. Hatred. There was nothing. Just distant pity. Like seeing a stranger's broken down car on the highway. Have you asked Blaze for help? Bitter laugh. He calls collect from Lewisburg every week asking for commissary money. Says we ruined his life. Says we should have hired better lawyers. He had the best lawyers money could buy his whole life. Look where it got him. Malcolm, please. She stepped forward, hand reaching but not touching. I know we hurt you. I know we made terrible mistakes, but we're old. We're your parents. Blood is... Stop! I held up my hand. Blood is just biology. You taught me that when you signed those papers. When you took my phone. When you dumped me like garbage. We were wrong. We know that now. We're sorry. You're not sorry. You're desperate. There's a difference. I got in my car. The door closed with a solid thunk. Started the engine. The garage filled with the sound. Through the rain-streaked window, I saw her standing there. Small. Defeated. In the harsh fluorescent light. I didn't back out immediately. Instead, I lowered the window halfway. Let the rain hit my face. You want to know the real joke, Linnea? I said. I spent 13 years imagining this moment. Dreaming about the day you'd come begging. About what I'd say. What devastating thing I'd do to make you feel what I felt. She looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. And now that it's here, I feel nothing. You're not my parents. You're not family. You're just 2 strangers who made bad choices and have to live with them. Just like I had to live with yours. Malcolm, Blaze gets out in 6 years, I continued. He'll come to you for money. For a place to stay. For bail on whatever he does next. And you'll give it to him because that's what you do. You'll choose him over yourselves, just like you chose him over me. And he'll bleed you dry until there's nothing left. That's your legacy. That's what you built. I put the car in reverse. Goodbye, Linnea. I rolled up the window. Backed out. The headlights swept across her face one last time. Mascara running, mouth open, hand raised like she was trying to stop time. I drove out of the garage. Didn't look in the rear view. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.